The Blast from Our Past Network.
In 1983, the kids of wheelchair camp survived a night of savage madness. Now, it's 1996, and the terror has returned. Don't go to wheelchair camp, part 2. You can roll, but you can't hide. Just when you thought it was safe to go back to camp, David Irons' Don't Go to Wheelchair Camp Part 2. Out now on Amazon.
Lock your doors, close your windows, turn out your lights, for chills and thrills await you. It's time for Podcasting After Dark with your hosts, Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer. Stay with a friend, say your prayers as grisly ghouls close in to seal your doom. Tonight's episode, Identity, starring John Cusack, Amanda Peet, and Pruitt Taylor Vince.
Hey, Corey, you ever have that dream where you think you're doing one thing and then you wake up from the dream and then you're in another dream and then you go back to sleep in that dream and you go back to the same dream? You ever have those dreams before?
Oh, yeah, no, totally. I dream that, sometimes I'll wake up in an interrogation, not knowing where I am or why I'm tied down, and then I'll go back to dream again, but with a newfound mission. Yeah, dude. I get you, buddy. I get you.
Ja feels, as you would say. Ja feels. Well, I think Patreon member Paulette, who is an executive producer of this show, or just straight up producer of this show, I think she gets that with us because today, everybody, well, welcome to Podcasting After Dark. It's, as the band Stain says, it's been a while since I've show run.
I know.
And I'm show running. It's me, Tiny T, with Sexy Sleazy C, joining me as always. What's going on, Corey?
Oh, buddy, just getting ready for Halloween, man. Got my costume almost together, and I'm going as Russell Crowe's character from The Nice Guys. Actually, from Amazon, I bought a blue leather jacket, and I bought, the shirt that he's wearing underneath. And now all I have to do is find a fake shotgun, which should be pretty easy to find at a Halloween store, and fake brass knuckles. I actually think that will be harder to find than the fake shotgun. But my buddy Luke is going to be he's going to be dressing up as Ryan Gosling's character from The Nice Guys. So we're going as a duo.
And your mother will be going as Shane Black.
Exactly. Is your costume together with Bodie and Femme French?
I believe so. Bodie's going to be a vampire, a Dungeons and Dragons inspired vampire. I will be a vampire hunter. Femme French will be hopefully a vampire queen. If not, she will be a bulb of garlic.
So the garlic is the backup then.
Yes. If you want to hear more about how these Halloween costumes went or go, depending on when we record it, tune into our Patreon exclusive Wrap Up After Dark. Go to patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. In fact, if you want to be a producer like Paulette, go to patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. The link is in the show notes. You can sign up at the highest tier and do what we're about to do for Paulette. Paulette chose what I am dubbing as the Halloween month of thrillers here at Podcasting After Dark. Not horror per se, but more thriller. There are some horrific moments in both Bruiser, which was, Cam Sully's pick, and Identity, which is today's pick. Identity came out in 2003. It's 21 years old. We're old. Oh my God.
Unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable.
Oh, yeah, it's kind of wild. Really briefly, before I ask you, Corey, I saw this movie in the theater when it came out. I'm a huge John Cusack fan, and I know this was kind of like somewhat of a departure from his typical roles as, romantic comedy, Gross Point Blank, High Fidelity, obviously Better Off Dead, and One Crazy Summer, a couple that I love. But yeah, the Identity was more of a thriller departure, kind of, sideways track for whether he needed it for a paycheck or whether he just did it because it sounded interesting. I have no idea. But yeah, I saw it in the theater way back when. How about you, Corey? When did you see it?
I didn't see it in the theater, but I did see it probably with my dad around that time. He kind of tended to like thrillers and whatnot. And, even when I was in college, my dad was close by. So I'd go, watch a movie with him on a, random night or something like that. And I think we caught this together. I hadn't seen it since. Kind of didn't even remember I watched it because you were asking me like, hey, have you seen this one while you were breaking it down? Because I think you wanted to talk to me. And I was like, I'm not sure yet. And yeah, 5 minutes into the movie, I was like, oh yeah, I've seen it. And then 45 minutes into the movie, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember the twist ending on this one. So yeah, no, it was good then. It's great now. I think it holds up really well, mainly because you got a stellar cast, and they're all looking great in their early 2000s. John Cusack, I love that dude. He looks fantastic. Early 2000s Ray Liotta looks fantastic. Amanda Peet, holy God. Yeah, and it's just like, and James Mangold directing it, it's like, holy crap, this movie's amazing. And we have to throw it out. We will be talking spoilers because once you know the ending, it puts everything in a completely different light when you're watching this movie. So if you've never seen it before, my God, of all the movies that Zach and I have talked about on this show, this is the one you got to stop now and go watch it because it is a damn good movie, but we are going to spoil the absolute hell out of it.
Yeah, this is in the same vein, just in the twist of being like a Session 9 kind of thing. So as my old 2XL would say, turn this off right now, go watch the movie, and then turn us back on and listen to the full breakdown, spoiler city of this movie Identity. And even before we get to the cast, the rest of the cast, we're going to spoil the movie in the cast breakdown. So we have to.
There's just no way of talking about this movie without doing that. Because, you'd be listening to our conversation and we'd have to be cryptic all the way up until, the 2-hour mark here. And you're like, well, we can't. This is one of those movies where we just can't.
Yeah. So those of you that are like, nah, it'll be fine. No, seriously, turn this off right now. We'll give you like a 2-second break and then we'll come back on. So turn us off right now. Go watch the movie. It's free on Tubi, by the way. You can go watch it on Tubi for free. So, and it's 90 minutes. So you get like maybe 3 or 4 commercial breaks. It's not that big of a deal.
Shit, it's like 1 hour and 29 minutes, man.
Yeah,
it's like, it's
that's
awesome.
True.
Thank you, Paulette.
Yeah, thank you, Paulette, for picking a movie that I can break down fairly easily. So turn this off right now. And we're back. Oh, Spoiler City. Wow, what a long break that was. 90 minutes. Okay. Corey and I both mentioned John Cusack is the quote-unquote star of this movie. He plays Ed. Favorite John Cusack movie? Go.
Oh, you know what? Gross Point Blank.
Better Off Dead.
Okay.
Right.
Here's the thing. I know that, we both grew up in the 80s. We're 80s fans and everything. I've only seen Better Off Dead like maybe twice in my life. I talk about it all the time. I wasn't a big comedy watcher as a kid, which is probably because my dad didn't watch a lot of comedies. And if I did watch comedies, it was more of the John Candy, Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd ilk from back then, Great Outdoors and stuff like that.
Yeah, this is an off-kilter, twisted film, Better Off Dead. So, yeah, I might say One Crazy Summer. No, I'm going with Better Off Dead. Ray Liotta plays Rhodes. Favorite Ray Liotta movie? Go!
Cocaine Bear.
How dare you? Over Goodfellas?
No, it's Goodfellas, guys. It's
got to be Goodfellas.
Of course it's Goodfellas.
Goodfellas, guys.
Yeah. Guys.
Cats and dogs. Come on, guys.
Come on. Yeah. Goodfellas, obviously a classic. And I love that movie so much, as most of us do. And it's kind of cliche at this point to be like, oh, Goodfellas, Scarface and everything. But there's a reason those movies are and were so popular.
Yeah. Goodfellas is a bona fide classic. And you could say Something Wild. He's really good in that. Oh, low key, as the kids say, go look up the movie Dominic and Eugene. That's my favorite Ray Liotta movie. Dominic and Eugene with Tom Holtz or Holsey or Holtz. That movie, love that movie.
Well, I am glad you brought up something wild because Myra watched that one on her own. She had this like, her and I watch a bunch of 80s movies, usually always together. I think she had COVID or something and I was doing something. And so she was just like, bedridden, and she watched a bunch of like 80s movies that I had never even seen before. And that was like the one that kicked it off with. So I'm like, oh, I kind of want to see it. But now that Myra's seen it, the probability of me being able to watch it goes down. You know how it goes.
I know how it goes.
I want to show her something newer, or new that she hadn't seen before. But she raved about Something Wild. She loved it.
Something Wild is fantastic. Yeah, that is great. And Dominic and Eugene. I'll say it again. Amanda Peet. Well, Amanda Peet, she was huge in the late 90s, early 2000s. This is probably peak Peet, if you will.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, my favorite Amanda Peet role is The Whole Nine Yards because you get to see her naked.
I saw that part.
Actually, I actually really like that movie. I think it's funny.
Whole Nine Yards is great.
Matthew Perry's shtick. Some people like their shtick is like can turn some people off, but Matthew Perry, I always liked his thing.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Matthew Perry. And I would say Whole Nine Yards is probably the best movie that Matthew Perry has done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Amanda Peet plays Paris. These are all important names, by the way. John Hawkes plays Larry. Favorite John Hawkes movie? Go.
Well, I'll say the one
or
that
TV
I
show.
always. I'll say the one that I always sort of, will always know him from is the opening from Dusk Till Dawn. He's been in so much good shit, and I always love seeing him, and he's great in this. And this is also like best looking John Hawkes. Like everyone in this movie is at their absolute physical prime. That's what I kind of took away from this film. I was like, man, early 2000s was definitely good to this entire cast.
No, you're absolutely right. I love John Hawkes in Eastbound and Down. He's great in that. But he was in
the brother.
He's great in that. But he was in a cool indie movie in 2010 with a very young new Jennifer Lawrence. It's called Winter's Bone. If you've never seen Winter's Bone, that movie's fantastic. It's kind of like Deliverance, Hill People kind of movie.
Yeah, no, I remember when that one was coming out. But like I said, anytime he pops up on something, I just always remember from Dusk Till Dawn because that's the first time I had ever actually seen him before.
I think that's one of his first roles, yeah.
I think so too, yeah.
Alfred Molina plays Dr. Malik. Favorite Alfred Molina movie? Go!
Indiana Jones, the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I'm going to say Boogie Nights. Ricky Springfield, he's a buddy of mine.
And come on, he was fun as Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2 and everything, and he was in Frida, and he was in Magnolia. He was great in Magnolia too. But Raiders of the Lost Ark right at the beginning. Throw me the whip, I'll throw you the idol.
Dead. Yeah, he's dead. Clea Duvall plays Ginny. Clea Duvall, aka Molly Ringwald's stand-in. Favorite Clea Duvall movie? Go. I believe we're going to say the same thing.
Not Ghost of Mars, that's for sure. But I'm going to say The Faculty because I love that movie.
Me too. Where's the love for The Faculty? Y'all should pick that movie if you want to do a modern kind of Invasion of the Body Snatchers type film.
Right, because I think it's coming out on 4K from Kino or somebody relatively soon. She also played a role on Veep. She played I believe she was a Secret Service agent, but she played a lesbian, and she's a lesbian in IRL in real life. So it's cool to actually have representation like that. I always liked Clea Duvall, and when I was younger, I never understood why I didn't see her in more things. And I look back on it now with my eyes in 2024, and I think, it's because she came out and Hollywood, quote unquote, didn't know what to do with her. Now, neither of us really cared too much about Ghost of Mars. I probably liked it a little bit more than you did, but I think we both can agree that she was great in it, though.
She was really good. She's a very good actress. She's a very good actor. Ghost of Mars has solid cast. Just
execution.
Yeah. She's good. Another guy, favorite, John C. McGinley plays George York. Favorite John C. McGinley movie? Go.
Scrubs.
Not Office Space? I'm a Michael Bolton fan.
I am not a fan of Office Space. Sorry, guys and gals.
Wow, there's cracks developing in our friendship.
Well, I think too a lot of it was I've worked some office jobs before, but not that many. So like even when that movie came out, I was just working at the video store. So while I gravitated more towards Clerks and things like that than I would towards Office Space, because it didn't ring with me, you know?
Oh, okay. Well, we're all allowed to not like things. William Lee Scott plays Lou. I'm not really familiar with him, even though he looks like every 90s Dawson's Creek character actor.
Yeah.
So he plays Lou. Not Lou Bega, the Mambo number 5 guy, but just Lou.
Yeah, no, and I mean, looking through his IMDb, he's been in some stuff like Gone in 60 Seconds, The Butterfly Effect, like things that I've seen, but I don't recognize him at all from it. Like you said, dude, he is John G. generic guy from early 2000s.
No offense, y'all. No offense to William Lee Scott.
Exactly.
I really like these guys. I was listening to them. Not anymore.
The one William Lee Scott fan out there.
You're right.
And it's just William Lee Scott.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, William Lee Scott.
Oh, William Lee Scott. It sounds like a Confederate name.
Yes, it does.
I'm sure he's got a statue somewhere. Jake Busey plays Robert Maine. Favorite Gary Busey movie? No, favorite Jake Busey movie. I think you're going to say the same thing I am in Frighteners.
I'm going to say Starship Troopers because I love that movie and I think he's great in it. He gets more screen time in that movie, but
yes.
I adore The Frighteners. I think it's a criminally underrated horror comedy. I love what Jake Busey does in that movie. I think he's fantastic. But he gets more to. I think he gets more to do in Starship Troopers, or more to do consistently in Starship Troopers, because his character in Frighteners is kind of like CGI for a lot of the movie.
Yeah, that's true. And by the way, both movies almost 30 years old.
Jesus Christ.
We're old. I'm going to skip over one guy and come back to him in a minute.
Okay.
Rebecca De Mornay, Caroline Suzanne. What's your favorite
fuck.
Rebecca De Mornay movie? Go.
The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, because I saw it in the theater with my dad and I was weirdly, awkwardly turned on. But I also loved her in Risky Business too. And can I just say, am I horny today? Can I just say that I think she looks better in this movie than she did in like the 80s.
Yeah, so I saw Rebecca De Mornay last year at a screening of Risky Business, the 40th anniversary screening of Risky Business here in Los Angeles. She came out to do the Q&A, and she retired from acting. I don't know if it was before this or after this, but she retired from acting for quite a few years to raise her family, and she's now doing movies again. She looks fantastic. She looks fantastic. I will
leave
it
me
at
to
that.
be Sleazy C.
Yes. There's an actor. He plays a relatively small role in this. He's a defense lawyer for the main villain of this movie, but his name's Carmen Argenziano. You recognize this guy, character actor. He's been in everything. I don't know. Do you recognize him from anything?
I recognized his face, and he's got a gazillion credits under his IMDb, but and I've seen so much of it, but I couldn't say, oh, it's him from that movie. But yeah, I definitely recognized him.
So the only reason I bring him up is because over on $2 Late Fee, we're covering The First Power in October, and he's actually in The First Power.
Oh, okay, cool. Awesome.
And he's also in Unlawful Entry with Ray Liotta.
Okay. I remember that movie. I like that movie. I want to call out somebody, a smaller actor that's in it. Well, he's not a smaller actor. It's just he doesn't get a lot of screen time either. But he's in that same group of people. Holmes Osborne plays Judge Taylor, and I always know him as Donnie Darko's dad in Donnie Darko.
Oh, interesting. He also looks a little bit like an alum of Podcasting After Dark interview fame. Thomas Waite.
Yeah, he does. He's got some Thomas Waite vibes to him.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and there's a detective in that same group named Detective Verole. He's Frederick Coffin. He was in a Steven Seagal movie called Hard to Kill, which is He has a very, and he's in Mother's Day, by the way, too. But
Yeah,
he has a very
1980s
funny,
Mother's Day.
famous scene where Steven Seagal is shooting his gun. He's standing right next to him, and you see the guy blinking a bunch of times because the gun keeps going off. He can't help but blink a bunch of times. I thought it was kind of funny. And not to poke fun. Well, speaking of blinking, I'll get to that guy in a moment. Marshall Bell has a very small role in this movie.
Yeah, oh my God. Criminally underutilized as
He's
well.
in one scene. He's in one scene.
One scene, but oh God, I love Marshall Bell so much.
That guy's great.
He's always great, obviously, Quado, and he was also in Starship Troopers with Jake Busey. He was General Owen. He gets splattered by one of the hopper bugs.
Yes, and G versus E, of course. We've talked about him on TV Obscura with Birthday Boy, as of this recording, Diallo. So shout out to Diallo on his birthday, even though this episode won't come out until after his birthday. So I'm just going to say right now, he had a great birthday. It was filled with lots of fun stuff.
Happy birthday, buddy.
Yeah, buddy. And finally, like I said, speaking of blinking, Pruitt Taylor Vince plays Malcolm Rivers, a.k.a., well, I'll save it until 20 seconds after this. Malcolm Rivers, Pruitt Taylor Vince, he's a legendary character actor. I believe we were just talking about him. I feel like we were literally talking about him.
I don't feel like it was off air, I think, or I don't know, some episode of something. But yeah, this dude, I have always liked this guy in anything he pops up in. Obviously, he's been in Angel Heart. He's been in Constantine, which is a movie I actually enjoy. Angel Heart is a movie that's very hard to watch, but I do like it. Although I liked it more when I was younger. I don't actually think it holds up as incredibly well as everyone sort of puts it on that pedestal.
Yeah,
and I say that as someone who just watched it within the last year with his wife.
It's a cult movie, and by cult I mean like the people that like it love it, and then there's the people that are like, it was pretty good. Yeah. Okay, so that's the basic cast. There's a couple other actors too that we can call out, but I mean they're kind of insignificant acting wise.
Yeah. I mean honestly, this is the entire cast right here. Let's spend more time talking about director James Mangold.
Yes.
Who obviously is, of recently known for the spectacular film Logan, but he's also done Ford versus Ferrari, Walk the Line. He did Dial of Destiny, and I don't know if it's still on the docket, but he was working on a Star Wars film too.
Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, he cut his teeth early in the film business with Copland in 1997, which is one of my all-time favorite Stallone movies, also starring Ray Liotta.
Yeah, you rave about Copland. I've always wanted to watch it, and I haven't had a chance to.
Yeah, he's a very talented director who's done quite a few decent movies. This
and
one,
some stinkers like The Wolverine.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of Walk the Line either. I think Walk the Line is a little overinflated. It's like you're wanting to see John C. Reilly straight up funny, and it just kind of like drags a little bit for me. Well, oh wait, sorry.
I was going to say I don't think that's a John C. Reilly movie.
Sorry.
I know what you're talking
My
about.
bad.
You're talking about the other one. This is the one where Joaquin Phoenix is playing Johnny Cash.
Yeah, this movie's good. That movie is good. Walk the Line.
Yeah, I think you're thinking of Walk Hard, maybe.
Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that movie. Not a big, huge fan of that, but I love John C. Reilly.
I haven't seen The Dial of Destiny, the latest Indiana Jones film.
It's great. I think it's really good. I think it's maybe like most Indiana Jones movies, 15 minutes too long, but it's really good. I'd put it above. This is gonna annoy some people, but I'd put it above Last Crusade.
Yeah, no, I know you're not the biggest fan of Last Crusade, and I can't really comment on it because I haven't seen it probably in 15 years.
It's more of a kids movie than Last Crusade.
Okay, which I think that's the better way to go. On a side note, I would love to just take Indiana Jones into animation now. Just do that at this point.
Whoever controls that, whether it's Spielberg or whatever, missed the mark not doing an animated series.
Agreed.
Do you want to talk about Michael not related to George Clooney, but Michael Cooney.
Michael Cooney. So this movie was written by the guy who wrote and directed the 1997 Jack Frost movie. You know, the one that came out at the exact same time as the Michael Keaton Jack Frost movie. And also people would return to like Blockbuster. They would swap cases and put like this one in that case and stuff like that. As a kid, that year blew my mind. I was infinitely fascinated by the fact that we have two movies that are essentially the same setup, but different outcomes. You know, like a horrific accident turns someone into a snowman, but one becomes a killer and one becomes a great father.
I mean, Jack Frost also got he did a sequel as well in 2000, sure. And shocking. Yeah, like I have seen both, and I'm gonna say that the Jack Frost 97 one is better than the Michael Keaton one.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, buddy. I've seen this one too. It's got Shannon Elizabeth in this wild scene in the bathtub and everything. By the way, I was at a horror convention in Baltimore a couple weekends ago, and I don't do the autograph thing, but I could, I still walk around the autograph area, and Shannon Elizabeth was there taking pictures with people. She is tall in real life.
She is. She was a parent at my school for a cup of coffee while I was teaching there, and yeah, she's very tall.
Yeah, she is. She nice?
Yes, very nice.
And leave it at that.
Leave it at that. A lot of makeup. It's amazing what makeup can do for you. I want to mention really quickly the composer of this movie is Alan Silvestri, who is hands down one of the greatest movie composers of all time, from the Avengers movies to Forrest Chump. I mean, like, just beyond great, like a legend, if you will, in this industry. The Predator, Ready Player One, and of course, before anyone drives off the road and they're like, wait, you're not going to mention Fools Rush In? No, I'm not going to mention Fools Rush In. Or Clean Slate, or Cop and a Half, or Sidekicks. I mean,
the dude works.
The dude works, but of course, Back to the Future.
Of course.
And Mac and Me. And Predator. The original Predator, he composed that as well. The da-na-na-na-na-na.
But apparently he came in as a replacement for another score by Angelo Badalamenti. So I don't have anything sort of further knowledge on that, but Angelo Badalamenti did Mulholland Drive, Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me, Lost Highway. I don't know why Silvestri was brought in to replace his score and how much of Angelo's score was already created, but that's interesting.
I mean, Alan Silvestri, I'll take him hands down over most people any day, because he did Romancing the Stone, which is probably my favorite movie score one of my favorite movie scores of all time.
The Joan Wilder?
The Joan Wilder?
I love it. But
God,
also apparently this wasn't his first time that Alan Silvestri took over for Angelo. That also happened on Shattered from 1991. So
interesting.
And I do want to bring one little piece of trivia into all of this, because we're kind of getting it all out of the way. We did a good job without not spoiling things. So let's get this last piece of trivia out there before we go hog wild. This was like 90% filmed on a soundstage. So that motel with the rain and all that kind of stuff was a recreation of another motel, because you see the real motel when she drives away at the end. But this was a soundstage on the Sony lot in Culver City, and it was the same soundstage they used for the Emerald City and the Wizard of Oz. So it means it's a big soundstage with a very high, ceilings, so they can get that sort of that look. But it also kind of explains why the movie has this heavy CGI look to it, and I think it's because they use CGI to fill in the background and all that kind of stuff.
Interesting. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I didn't notice the CGI as much this time on a small screen than I did when I saw it in the theater. In the theater, I was like, ooh, it took me out of it a little bit. Not so much this time.
Right. It kind of has a little bit of this like weird fake look to it. But here's what's funny. Because of what the story ultimately turns out to be, it actually fits for it. The uncanny valleyness of that motel, I don't think it was intentional. but when you watch it under the light of knowing what the movie's about, you're like, okay, that's something you can actually write off as unintentionally that it works though, you know?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
It's kind of like how in Tron Legacy, how bad the de-aging of Jeff Bridges looks, but you're like, but it's supposed to take place in a computer, so you can kind of like sort of write it off, even though that wasn't the intention, you know?
Yeah, and I still love Tron Legacy.
Yeah, me too. I adore that film.
Alan Silvestri also composed the music for Manimal, the TV show Manimal. And Chips.
We covered that on
Chips.
TV Obscura.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. All right, should we get into spoiler heavy? We're going to drop the bomb pretty much from the get-go. Identity, are you ready for it?
Hell yeah.
There was a storm.
It was an accident. We had an accident.
And we got stuck, and we couldn't get out. We couldn't get out because of the storm.
It's flooded. It's dead end.
You the manager? I'm Officer Rose. Transporting a prisoner here. But the roads were all flooded and I could use a room.
I don't think we can get out tonight.
I'm not staying here. Are you out of your mind?
There's no place else to go.
What happened at the motel? People started dying.
What's going on?
Go in your room and lock your door.
And then their bodies, they disappeared.
Nobody in there.
That's not possible. I saw what happened. We all saw what happened.
This doesn't make any sense.
Maybe there's some connection between all of us.
Like what?
My birthday next week.
Me too.
Me too.
Yeah.
So once again, Paulette is the patron who produced
Our
this-
patron saint.
I like that. Our patron saint from Patreon, our Patreon saint, if you will, who produced this show. She chose the movie 2003's Identity to break down. Corey and I will be breaking this movie down. So if you are interested in being a Patreon member and want to, I don't know, if you got movies that you like, love, and we'll break them down scene by scene, and we'll do the typical Podcasting After Dark banter that we always do, that you know and love us from. Sign up at patreon.com/podcasting after dark to the highest tier. And it's, if you ask me, it's totally worth it. For all the people that we've done it for: Aaron Gilmer, Robert Ortiz, Cam Sully, Crystal, and of course you, Paulette. Thank you guys for choosing the movies that you've chosen. It's changed up our month. This is a horror Halloween month. We're doing thrillers. Obviously, we did Bruiser with Cam Sully, and now Identity with Paulette.
Yeah, thank you, Paulette. Really awesome to, get the chance to revisit this film. And guys and gals, we've actually done a good job of not doing the spoilers. But moving forward, Zach and I, are going to just converse naturally. The spoiler may not come for like 10 minutes. It may not come for a half hour. I don't know. But at this point, we're just going to talk naturally about the film. So again, spoilers moving forward now.
Yeah, you watched it on Tubi for free with a few commercials, and you loved it, right? So now we're going to get into it. All right, opening credits, you hear thunder and lightning crash, and then
the thunder rolls.
Then you see what appears to be a recording of a conversation between a doctor and his patient. patient being Malcolm, the doctor being Dr. Malik, played by Alfred Molina. While the voiceover is playing from the cassette tape, you see the doctor looking over the records of this patient. It's pictures of like a mother's rap sheet. There's many clues to the movie in the opening scene, but the movie starts with a reoccurring poem that I will read now, that I won't read later because I'm not going to do it 3 times in a row. But the poem is you hear Malcolm speaking. He says, "When I was going up the stairs, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish he'd go away." And you hear this poem. This poem is from William Hughes Mearns. The title of the poem is called Antagonish. Yeah. It was apparently turned into a song as well, giving it widespread attention according to IMDb.
But he claims he made it up in the recording. And you did mention that there's a lot of clues in the paperwork that we're looking at, Molina's paperwork that he's going over and everything. There's this like diagram that he has with like a circle and all these other prongs and circles coming off of it with just kind of numbers. And you realize that that's a major clue to the ending of the movie. It's like, it's pretty much right in your face right there.
Yeah, you're right. And when the doctor does ask him, where he learned that, and he said he made it up. He said he was a kid when he made it up. And the doctor says, "Whoa, what else? What else do you remember from back then?" Malcolm gets upset, saying, "Don't beat around the bush, Doc. Don't beat around the bush." Corey, never mind. Malik says, "Tell me what you remember about your mother." He goes, "I remember my mom. I remember my mom was a whore." Whoa, shocking. And then the Malik is saying, "How long did she keep you there?" You find out through the clippings that Malcolm, as a boy, was abandoned at a motel when he was a child. He was found by the police there.
Yep, and he hates whores, which is why one of the characters in this movie hates whores.
Exactly. Malik says, "Do you understand why you're talking with me now?" And Malcolm says, "You're supposed to be good with headaches." But he goes, "I need something more than aspirin, you know what I mean?" And then Malik cuts to the chase and says, "Do you remember the murders?" Malcolm is kind of stream of consciousness, says, "I remember that Columbia is the capital of South Carolina. I remember that."
Yeah, he's almost like autistic when it comes to, he kind of like very much pays attention to what is like state capitals, essentially.
Right. And Malik says, the doctor says, "Are you the person who murdered the 6 residents of the Lake Worth apartments in May?" And Malcolm says, "That's my birthday." Malik says, "Who am I speaking to right now? What should I call you?" And Malcolm says, "Call me whatever you want."
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's wild how much, if you pay attention, all that dialogue is 100% applicable to the last 10 minutes of the film. Like the giant big reveal, and it's like all there. And if you paid attention in the first place, you can kind of see some things coming.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a great opening to the movie, setting up what is about to be 90 minutes of a wild ride, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
You cut to Marshall Bell, who's a district attorney, gets woken up in the middle of the night by his assistant.
Did you notice that technically he's sleeping in his suit? Because he's sleeping, but when he sits up, he's in his suit still.
You don't sleep that way? Where the hell's the records room? So the assistant tells the DA that a case they're working on has been punted to Judge Taylor,
Donnie Darko's dad.
Exactly. And if they want the execution of the case, of the person in the case to go forward, they'd have to hold an evidentiary tonight. The district attorney, Marshall Bell, is pissed off about this. He's like, "What's going on?" He's literally just annoyed that this whole thing is happening. Like, how did this happen? The assistant says, "Well, the diary gave them an opening to argue insanity again. So they need Rivers present, Malcolm Rivers. So they pumped him up with drugs and put him in a transport." And the DA's like, "Transport? Where? This is fucking unheard of. The night before his execution? How could they let this happen? They can't chauffeur a Blue Watch prisoner around the desert in the middle of a fucking hurricane." And that's the opening to the movie.
Yeah, and it sets everything up there. The only person we kind of didn't call out was the assistant district attorney guy that he's talking to, Marshall Bell's talking to. Matt Letcher, dude, like he's another one of those faces where I've seen him a million times before, but like, nothing really stands out to me,
Yeah, he's got a familiar face, familiar character actor.
He was in Her, a movie that I liked, 2013 Her. He's also in Mask of Zorro and stuff like that. But yeah, you saw, if you see him, you'd be like, that guy.
That guy's going to break this movie down. That guy. Cut to a motel in the middle of nowhere while rain is coming down, pouring outside. We are introduced to Larry in the reception office of the motel. He's watching Wheel of Fortune while drinking shots. John C. McGinley's character, George, comes in carrying his dying wife, Alice. And he's shouting, "She won't stop bleeding. She won't stop bleeding." Larry says, "What happened?" From there, you get this cool, thank the gods, not flash cut, but like almost freeze frame into a transition to a backstory scene.
Yes, so much better than the inserting of that little flash frame that, I know you hate. I don't hate it as much as you, but after us talking about it on the Carpenter Factor, I definitely notice it a lot more now. And I like the flashbacks in this as a sort of breakup of the flow of the film. They kind of pack them in heavy at the beginning, then they add a couple, at the end. But I do have a problem with it on rewatch because it never happened. You know what I mean? So it's like you watch it when you know what's going on. You're like, well, it doesn't ultimately exist. You know what I mean?
Well, therein lies one of the issues that I have with this movie, which ultimately, if you let it go, I think you'll enjoy it more. But this is all in the head of the killer.
Yeah.
So none of it took place. None of this takes place. So literally, this whole story is just a fable, a nighttime scary story to tell somebody.
Right. And that happens in movies of this ilk, where, on first blush, on first watch, you're like, oh my God, I'm into it. But on a second watch, knowing that technically none of it is real, you're like, well, then any sort of drama that is put forth between the characters here doesn't matter because it doesn't exist.
Yeah. So, I've been known to hate on the movie The Others with Nicole Kidman because I'm just not a huge fan of that movie. And I already know from the beginning that she's a ghost and the whole thing is a ghost. Sorry, spoiler. And so with that being said, a movie that you already know the outcome to better have some really good acting. And The Others does have great acting and it's a well-directed film. I'm not hating on that. So if, a Sixth Sense type movie, a Shyamalama Ding Dong type movie, it better be good like Sixth Sense or not, instead of being bad like The Happening.
Yeah.
Or Devil.
Yeah. And watching this on a second go round, like 2 days in a row, basically. So everything's fresh. The second time I watched it, it allowed me to kind of just enjoy the acting in a way that I've sort of never done before, because you can kind of be like, I don't care what they're saying. I don't care what they're doing because it doesn't matter. But I'm going to sit back and actually enjoy these actors and the things that Ray Liotta is doing with this, everything that people are doing is so much fun that this movie is still fun. But when you want to sit here and have a conversation about it, it is what it is. But we're going to break it down and we're going to go through it and we're going to talk about everything, that we like and dislike about it. But it is interesting on a second viewing. When you think about it, ultimately nothing really matters.
It's not a Metallica song. No, I don't know. Nothing else matters. Okay. So from there, we cut back to George and Alice's story and a little boy named Timothy. They are driving down the road, driving down a highway while the rain is sloshing down. Timmy's in the back playing with a toy, which is annoying the parents a little bit. The mom is being like sensitive to him about it, but then she's talking to her husband, George, who's clearly on the spectrum of nowadays. You look at that and he goes, nowadays you look at that and go, he's clearly has Asperger's, because he's like very, 10 and 2 position. He's like reciting all the things you need to do in a storm. And suddenly out of nowhere, you hear a loud explosion and one of their tires pops. George pulls the car over to the side of the road. And of course, he's like talking to himself, turn into the spin, apply the brake with short, firm pumps.
Look into mirrors. The rearview mirror, check your mirrors, like all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
He gets out of the car. Goes to check the tire and he pulls out a high-heeled spiked shoe. His wife asks what it is. He goes, I think it's a shoe.
And then it pauses on his face, and now we go to another flashback.
Yeah, to cut to the song All My Life by the Foo Fighters. Oh, boy.
Problematic now.
Yeah. By the way, I really always love the Foo Fighters. Don't like when Dave Grohl screams.
Yeah, okay.
Like he would do that in a song, it would be really cool, and then suddenly, oh, my life. And like, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. No
yeah.
So that song's playing while a woman in a convertible car is driving down the road. It's Paris, played by Amanda Peet, and she is looking for, she pulls out a cigarette. She's looking for her lighter. She looks in the glove box, nothing. Then she flashes back.
But film writing 101 is don't have a flashback within a flashback. But here it works, and you can follow it. And that's the thing, the whole flashback within a flashback. I actually have never had a problem with that, but I do know that it is a screenwriting no.
It's not terrible. It's just like, oh, okay, here we go. In many ways this feels like a music video type editing where it's very flashy. Flashes back to her singing for "He's a Jolly Good Fellow" in bed with a guy. She's got clothes on, but the guy is naked with whipped cream on his belly and a candle, and she's blowing it out. He's clearly a John. She's clearly a prostitute.
She's clearly crazy fucking hot. and I think that guy was one of the producers or something on the movie, and he was not an actor or whatever, He's like, let me write this into the script.
Yeah, I got an idea. Oh, Harvey Weinstein. No, he didn't. He had nothing to do with this movie, as far as I know. Anyways, flashes back to her with the lighter, then flashes back to her being in the car. She's throwing stuff out of the suitcase looking for the lighter, and one of her high heel shoes falls out of the car onto this highway, driving away.
Because she has a convertible, and she never puts the hood up or the top up, even when it's raining.
Yeah, which leads me to believe there was probably an issue with the top. Like maybe they cut that from the movie, but that probably it's somewhat important. Anyways, the shoe comes falling down on the ground. Cuts back to Alice and George outside of the car while George is fixing the tire. Timmy in the back seat knocks on the window to get his mom's attention. She lovingly looks at him in the window and starts backing up into the highway as she's smiling at him, to suddenly get plowed down by a car.
I mean, at the time, I was probably shocked by it, but looking back now, this is a trope that I hated from the late 90s and early 2000s. It's the Final Destination trope where the girl gets hit by the
I literally
bus.
wrote that. I literally wrote that in my notes.
It's the idea that these characters have absolutely no peripheral vision whatsoever. I mean, Final Destination, one of the girls in the first movie gets hit by the bus. It's like, how the fuck did you not see that coming? And in this, it's nighttime. She would have seen the headlights like a mile away coming, but like the flash editing that we saw in the late 90s, this is such a trope from this time period, and you could see it coming a mile away, unlike her character.
Unlike her character, who clearly was not paying attention. And then a State Farm insurance guy comes out of nowhere. Because like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
No, but seriously, dude, it's like in that time frame with these kind of jump scare kills. Well, she's not really dead, but in other movies, it's a kill. It's almost as if the fucking actors or the characters have literally like the horse blinders on the side of their head.
Let me ask you though, because this is all in the killer's mind, does she get a pass?
Well, and yes, and then I'm actually gonna also discuss that about Jenny later when I found Jenny to be annoying, but when you know what the deal is, it's all in his head. You're like, oh, he's in his head. That's what he thinks a girl, like a young lady, would be like. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like in my head, the canon, everything sort of gets a pass because it's just made up by, the killer.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Well, we get another flashback. The limousine stops. Driver gets out of the limousine. George freaking out, screaming, "Oh my God, what have you done? What have you done?" Picture freeze frames. Now we get the limousine's backstory. It's Ed, played by John Cusack. He's driving Caroline Suzanne, played by Rebecca De Mornay, who's the actress. She's an actress on the phone, looks annoyed. Her phone is dying, and she has a spare battery, and the driver, Ed, is looking for the battery, not looking up at while he's driving. And while he does, that's when he hits Alice with his car.
Dude, the early 2000s, when you had to have batteries for your phones, like your phones had like interchangeable batteries that you could take in and out. And also too, let me put it out there. If this was made in 2024, Rebecca De Mornay would be playing Rebecca De Mornay. Like she would be playing herself,
Yeah, she would. That like very meta, right?
Yeah.
So Corey, do you remember the first cell phone you ever had? Or what the brand was?
Yes, I had a Motorola Razr, and you know what?
Yeah, Razr. Those are cool looking.
I know, dude. And as much as I live with my iPhone now, I kind of still love the Razr. I thought it was always slick and cool looking. And these
they make
days,
those.
And nowadays, I'll be talking to my wife, and the phone doesn't work as a phone. I miss the days when phones were phones.
Yeah, no, I agree. I had a Virgin phone, where you paid for minutes on a card, and anyways, I remember you could play video games on it too. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
So
I heard there's a God of War game on the Razr. Yeah.
So Ed stops the car. Caroline's yelling at him, "What are you doing? Don't get out of the car." And he's like, "It's my responsibility." And she's like, "It's not your your responsibility is for me. You're supposed to drive me." He's driving her to Los Angeles. Ed gets out of the car, leaving Caroline there. He goes to check on Alice. George, I wrote clearly on the spectrum, screaming. He's like, "What have you done? What have you done?" And Ed, calmly says, "Can I take a look?" And while George is saying, "The driver of every motor vehicle who is in any manner involved in any accident originating from the operation of a vehicle," he's mumbling this stuff off. It's a really great character for John C. McGinley.
Yeah, no, he's doing great with this.
Yeah.
I don't know how, accurate it is or if, whatever, but I'm enjoying what he's doing.
Right. Me too. And, Ed's trying to break up George's ramble, and he's like, do you have a cell phone? Do you have a cell phone? And George was like, no, you can't have children near those things, microwaves, so clearly they don't have any of that stuff. Ed runs back to the car. He says, he's like, I need your phone. She's like, "No, you can't have it, Caroline." And he smashes the window to the car because she's locked her car shut. So not letting him in there. Cut back to Paris, who's driving down the road with her top down, like you said, the car's top down.
Yeah.
And
touche.
And I caught you before you had a chance to say anything. Corey's like, oh.
Go watch the whole 9 yards.
So she's driving down the highway and she comes to a flooded street. She backs up.
Would you say it's almost a river?
Yes, it is a river.
The last name of the killer?
Oh yeah, Malcolm River. Yeah, okay, cool.
It's Malcolm Rivers, but yes, this the hotel is cut off by two overflowing rivers. From this monsoon that's out in the desert. So
right.
I picked up on that the second time. I was like, rivers. Here we go. Okay.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So she turns her car around, but as she does, she hits a power pole in the process.
I thought that was going to lead to something.
Yeah. Because it doesn't.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Because it doesn't.
Well, I guess
doesn't make her look dumb because she's like, oh no.
Yeah. I mean, they can't make phone calls, I guess, but
Well, I don't think that was, but that was a power line, or I guess it was a telephone line.
It was a telephone pole. I guess that's what it's supposed to explain.
Okay, that's why the phone line is out. Although it's because none of this exists.
and she's dumb. So,
Yeah.
But if it was, okay, and everybody who's saying, oh, it's a woman. No, if it was a guy, we'd say he's dumb too.
Still dumb.
Yeah, still dumb. Anyways, from there, it cut back to now present time, sort of, in the motel with George bringing in Alice, kind of just recapping the scene from earlier, bringing Alice in and Larry asking what happened to her. And George says, there was an accident. Can we use your phone? Larry's not able to get anybody on the phone. And he said it happens in the rain.
So if it happens in the rain, then there was no point in hitting the pole, Amanda Peet to hit the pole.
Exactly. Ed brings little Timmy in to the reception area in the office, trying to reassure him. And Larry checks them in to a room. Ed goes back to the car and tells Caroline that this is where they're staying for the night. Caroline's freaking out. She's like, put my bags in the car. You're working for me. This is my car. She's like, look, I understand that bleeding person has a medical condition, but so do I. My lung walls have depleted Sicilia?
Zach, I don't know how much I'm going to edit this, but Zach tried that like 5 times.
I tried. It's Cecilia. That's what it is. Cecilia? Yeah. Anyways, she's like, if I stay here, I'll asphyxiate. And, he brings her in anyways.
By force, he kind of rips her out of the car.
Right. She comes up to Larry, and Larry's like, hey. He's looking at her ID. Didn't you used to be that actress? And she kind of looks solemn. She goes, yes. He starts to give her a room, and she goes, is it nice? She goes, I want the nicest room. And he says it's $30 for the night, but she gives him a $50, and he gives her room 8 because it's real cozy.
And because, I don't know if you noticed, but he looks over at her purse and she has like a stack of money. So he's like, oh, you basically just gave me an extra $20 and you have clearly literally thousands of dollars in cash there. And he's like, so you could just tell he's like, fuck you, 8's fine,
Exactly, right. Cut to Amanda Peet's car breaking down, and Ed has now gone looking for help in the limo. He pulls up to Paris, and she gets in the car with him.
Essentially, there's no drama about getting her. What are you doing out here? It's just like, okay. Kind of like when they also meet Lou and Jenny. It's like, okay, let's just move forward with everything.
Right, because Paris, she goes, where are you headed? You're going east. This is the direction I was going. And Ed says, the hospital's this way. And she goes, well, the road's flooded this way. It's a dead end. And he continues to drive, and she's like, did you hear what I just said? He goes, yes, I did, but he has to keep going, right? He has to find help for Alice. And then suddenly they get to the end of the road, and the car goes into the ditch, which is where the river's flowing. She goes, I told you there's no way through.
Yeah, and it's good editing. It's like, they're driving. She's like, it's flooded this way. And it's literally cuts to the front of the car, down in the little bit of the little river. And she's like, yeah, I told you. It's very economical as far as storytelling goes.
Exactly. And this is when we're introduced to Ginny and Lou.
The newlyweds.
Jenny's driving down the road while Lou's sleeping. And they pull up to Ed and Paris. And Lou's like, what's going on? What's going on right now? Ginny tells him to wake up. Ed says, we need a cell phone. Do you have one? And Lou goes, who wants to know? And Ed says, look, there's been an accident. I need a phone now. And then this is when Lou's like, dude, slow down. First of all, we don't know who you are. Second of all, I don't see an accident. But then he sees Paris. And that's when he kind of gets excited. And he tells Ginny to pop the trunk for them to put their stuff in and let them in. And Ginny looks annoyed. Ed runs back to his car before he gets in the car with Ginny and Lou, and he grabs a gun from the glove box. That's important.
But yeah, it's like, again, I do love the fact that how economic this whole beginning part is, because this is, and I think the filmmakers know, this is not the interesting drama that we care about. We want everyone in the motel together. But now I do feel like other movies would have drawn this interaction out a little bit more, and maybe there was more to it, and it just sort of got cut, because Lou does kind of turn around quickly, whether it's because he's looking at Paris and kind of wants to be near her. That kind of doesn't really go anywhere. I just like the fact that we only literally spend a minute and a half with this little scene here, and then we get back.
Yeah, because he clearly kind of is interested in Paris, because he gives her a nod, and Ginny looks annoyed.
Yeah.
Understandably. Anyways, JK, LOL. And so you cut back to the motel. Larry watches as Paris, Lou, and Ginny climb out of the car, followed by Ed. And Larry's looking at Paris kind of, crossly. And Larry says, where's the car? And Ed says, it's stuck in a road 2 miles down from here. The other way's fucked too. The girl was stranded. The kids gave us a lift. And Larry says, she a hooker? To Paris. And then Ed kind of doesn't acknowledge that statement and says, is there another way out of here? And Larry says, you wouldn't make it 500 feet from here. Ed asks, how's Alice doing? And Larry says, I don't know. They're in room number 4. Cut to Ginny looking over like the brochures of the motel. And she's looking at, you see a tribal tombs brochure that she's looking at.
Yeah, so this is laying the groundwork for probably the biggest red herring of the movie, because at some point it's going to become very aware that it's supernatural.
Supernatural.
Thanks, buddy. I can never say the term supernatural without thinking of you and saying it like that. But at some point you become very aware that something is going on here, something odd, and we'll call it out when it gets there. It's it's a scene with Jake Busey. And so this is laying this like complete red herring that it's some kind of possible Native American purgatory type of thing, or they're being attacked, by some sort of spirits of Native American type of thing. It's all made up. It's all a red herring, but I think you need it to kind of give people something else to latch on to, it's just in its truest sense of the form, it's a red herring. And I love that term. I've always loved that term ever since I was a kid with a pup named Scooby-Doo. Because remember the villain, the other villain of the cartoon, like the neighbor, his name was Red and his last name was Herring. And it's kind of funny because with mysteries and stuff like that, and if you don't know what that is, it means it's like false clues trying to lead you to a false conclusion.
My neighbor's name was Mike Crotch.
Did you watch a pup named Scooby-Doo?
Oh, I love that. I loved it more than the original Scooby-Doo.
Probably me too. Although I do have fond memories for Tim Conway on the original Scooby-Doo and everything.
The celebrity cameos were great on Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
So now Paris goes to Larry to rent a room, and Larry says, we don't rent rooms by the hour. Paris says, funny, still serving food? And he goes, yeah, vending machines are around the corner. But then he looks at Ginny and Lou and says, the rooms are warm, dry, and $30 in advance. He's being super nice to them. And Paris, he's not even looking at Paris. He goes, excuse me, I was talking to you. I'd appreciate it if you looked at me. And Larry says, I don't like looking at trash. Oh, sick burn.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, like, I don't know, you watching this, I'm like, does any real person act like this? But knowing that he's a representation of the killer and everything, it's him hating his mother, essentially.
Right, exactly. Cut to Ed going to room 4 to check in on Alice and George and Timmy. Ed comes in and tells George that they're stuck there, and he takes a look at Alice. George says she keeps shaking and she's in shock. Ed says, do you have a sewing kit? And he says, no. Meanwhile, Paris is going to room 7. That's important to know. Ginny goes to her room, which is room 6, but as they get in there, the 6 flips over into 9.
Right, yes. And I never
The reason why, because it's victim 6 and 9.
Oh, they are 6 and 9. Thank you. Okay, good call. I couldn't figure that out, but yeah, you're right. 2 people in the same room, and then they have their numbers are together, essentially.
I literally just figured that out just now.
Good job, buddy. Good job.
Detective. And Ginny says 6. At least we got a good number.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Corey here. I just want to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
Have you been wondering where's the beef? Well, on our podcast, Throwback Trivia Takedown, you might just find that out, as well as some other things about the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
We're a nostalgic-based trivia show that pits 2 challengers head-to-head in a duel of the decades, with categories ranging from movies, TV, and music, to slang, food, and fashion. You're sure to get the best in retro-themed trivia.
So strap on your jelly shoes, grab a Surge, and walk like an Egyptian to your favorite podcast app and check out Throwback Trivia Takedown.
I heard even Mikey likes it.
And now, back to the show.
Cut back to Larry in the reception office, rustling through drawers and putting things away, and you see a quick cut of a picture of a dude holding a fish that's not Larry. And a car pulls up.
And he kind of puts it in the drawer of a desk with all a bunch of like bills and things like that. So you're like, what's going on here?
Right. Quick cut back to Ginny and Lou in their room, and Ginny she feels something. She even says, she's like, I feel something. And Lou says, what? And she goes, cold. And then Lou just kind of shrugs it off.
Because at that time, that's when Ray Liotta's character is driving up.
Right. Ray Liotta's character drives up Rhodes in the cop car, and Rhodes gets out and talks to Larry. He says, you the manager? To Larry, and Larry goes, maybe. Rhodes says, I'm transporting a convict. And then he's very like by the book. He's like, the law grants you the right to decline a service, but the roads are flooded and I could use a room. Suddenly out of nowhere, Ed shows up and says, we need your help. He says, do you have a radio in the car? Rhodes looks at Larry and says, who's this? And Larry says, he's a limo driver. He had an accident. Ed says, I got a lady in the room over here pretty banged up. We could use an ambulance. Rhodes gets in the car, in the cop car, on the radioing in 442 requesting medical, but nothing's coming through. And Rhodes looks at Ed, says, like I said, nothing for the past hour. Ed asks if he has a first aid kit, and Rhodes says, no, sorry. Ed asks Larry, how about a needle and thread? And Larry says, maybe in the diner. Ed volunteers to go get it. Larry says, no, I'll get it. It's all locked up. And then he says to Rhodes, I'll be back with your key. I'm going to put you in number 10. Number 10.
Yep.
I guess, wouldn't he be... Because
but Jake, yeah, I don't know if the numbers are actually.
I don't know if they match up.
Yeah, I know.
So the order is the first to die.
Rebecca de Mornay.
So that's 1. Number 2 is it Lou is number 2?
Oh no, but 10, yeah, because Ray Liotta is number 10. He's the last one. So yeah, that makes sense.
But doesn't Ed die last?
Yeah, but he's like the main character. Yeah, I know. So
whatever, I guess.
Yeah,
whatever.
It's not perfect.
No. Okay. He's not number Paris is number 10 because she finds the number 10. Well, no, she finds number 1. They go 10, 9, 8.
They go count down. But then it is correct on the 9 and the 6, though, I think.
I think she is number 6. I think that's right. I think the numbers are flipped when it comes to the order of who dies, but
yeah, but why? But he's not number 10 though. Like, so it means he's not number 1.
They're the last ones to show up, though. They're the last ones to show up.
Okay.
So maybe that's
all right. Yeah.
Sure. Even though we're breaking it down, there's still some points of confusion.
Yeah.
Because it's all in the mind of the killer. Spoiler. Anyways, Ed asks who's in the back of the car, and Rhodes says prison transfer. And Ed says, well, when you get them situated, can you come to number 4 and take a look at the lady? I could use a second opinion. And Rhodes says, sure. You see in the back of the car, it's Maine, played by Jake Busey. And he goes, looks like you're fucked. And Rhodes says, shut up.
Yeah, and Jake Busey's playing the very typical crazy convict kind of guy, sort of looking down with his head, but looking up with his eyes with that smile and everything. But again, I think it's cliche for a reason, because it's from a guy who's been institutionalized for so many years. He's not, the only thing he knows about reality is probably what he's seen on TV and read in books and stuff like that. So he's making all these characters up based on stereotypes to begin with. So right. I think that explains why they sometimes behave so stereotypically.
Right. No, you're nail on the head. Cut back to Ed now sewing up Alice's neck. Larry makes a comment saying, I wish I had beige. That would have been better.
I like that. I wrote that down. I actually really like that comment because, yeah, he's using like more of a darker thread so you can kind of see it. But I like how Larry's like, oh, I wish I had beige. That would have matched her skin tone better.
Right. Ed looks over at Timothy, who's just sitting there looking spaced out. And Ed asks George if he's all right. And George says, well, Timothy doesn't talk much ever since his father, he left. Timothy continues to look out the window of number 4. As he's doing that, you see Rhodes dragging Maine toward the motel.
Taylor Maine.
Taylor Maine. Tell it to my heart. Tell me I'm the only one. I like that song, actually. She's good.
You too, of course. I have it on my 80s Grady's playlist, buddy.
As you should. Rhodes drags Maine into a room, and Larry comments that the furniture's to shit, but Rhodes takes Maine to the bathroom where he handcuffs him to the toilet.
Yeah, because Larry does say that, well, the toilet piping is pretty good. And I like how Jake Busey's like, thanks, buddy, type of thing.
Maine starts singing, and he starts singing, and as he does, that's when Rhodes smacks him in the face. You cut back to Ed with George and Alice, and Rhodes shows up. Rhodes takes a look at the neck and comments to Ed that he did a nice stitch job. And he checks her pulse. He says it's shallow but steady. And Ed said, hey, maybe we can do shifts on the radio if it's all right. And Rhodes goes, no, it's not. I can manage. Cut to Paris at the vending machines getting food, and lurker Rhodes, looking very sleazy, eyeing Paris, comes up behind her. And she spots him first, and she goes, you going to bust me, officer? And Rhodes says, how'd you do that? How'd you know I was a cop? She points at the cop car, which is right behind him, and he laughs.
It's like, oh, yeah, I'm an idiot.
He's so good at being sleazy.
Dude, this is actually one of my favorite scenes in the movie just because of it's almost like it's almost one take, like the camera very rarely kind of cuts. I think maybe towards the end of the scene, but it's all Ray Liotta's face, and he is great in this scene here. He's menacing but charming at the same time.
I think most people now will be like, I want to stay away from that dude, but there are a handful of people that would be like, I'm kind of into this guy.
I mean, I'm kind of into this guy right here.
Yeah, case in point. So you'd be the first to die, and I wouldn't.
Yep.
Yep. So she asks him for change, and he's like, he kind of gets up in her face, and he's pulling change out of his pocket for her.
Back when we had change in our pockets.
Right. And he says, you got a name? And she goes, Paris. He goes, Paris. I've never been there. She goes, well, you ain't going tonight.
Good.
She takes her snacks.
Solid burn.
Solid burn, baby. From here, you get a montage of everybody at the motel. First, it's Timothy, George, and Alice. Timothy's sleeping. And as George is like basically begging Alice not to die. Cut to Ed in room 3, listening to George for a moment. He has a small box. He opens it. It's medication. And he also has his gun. Remember, he has a gun.
Yep.
Cut to Larry in the office. This is when he's going through his desk drawer more, looking for a photo. He puts the photo away of the guy holding the fish in a drawer. Cut to Paris in her room, checking on her little
attaché
case.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. With a huge wad of cash inside.
Lots of money in there.
Cut to Lou asleep on a couch while Ginny's watching him. Not sure if he's asleep. Just kind of like, glaring at him a little bit. Cut to Rhodes.
This is the coolest part.
Yeah, cut to Rhodes in his room while Maine is in the bathroom trying to pry the cuffs off the toilet.
And this is when we see Rhodes put on his jacket. But before he puts on his jacket, we see his back. His back, the shirt has a blood stain on it with a hole directly in the middle. You don't know, you kind of assume it's a gunshot, but you don't really know what it is. But clearly, it can't be his shirt because he's not dead,
Yeah,
but it's right in the spine.
Right in the spine. Yeah, exactly. While he puts his jacket on and starts to walk out of the room.
Yeah. I mean, again, this movie is expertly crafted and in layering these interesting little things. You don't know where it's going to go until you do know where it goes. But then once you know where it goes, you can go back and watch it and be like, okay, this is interesting when they put this piece in here and this piece in there. And actually, I mean, a lot of times what movies do wrong like this is once you find out the twist, there's still like so much more to go. This movie, once you find out the twist, there's only like 13 minutes left in the movie because they know that at this point there's no, you know what I mean? It's not going to be able to sustain itself. So the movie does a great job of telling you when the twist is coming and builds it up right at that point. And then there's just not much left because there doesn't need to be much left after that.
No, because once the twist is revealed, that's it.
Exactly.
And then finally cut to Caroline, who's in her room giving a speech to like her agent or manager in front of a mirror. And she's trying to dial on her phone, but again, there's no signal. She looks outside, it's still pouring down rain. She goes to outside to get a better signal, but in the process, she takes the shower curtain out of the bathroom and puts it over her head like an umbrella. She goes through the layout of the motel, crossing over like near where the pool is, and as she does, she's starting to get a signal. Then there's a shadow that kind of moves by her. She turns around, freaks out, and screams, and then you get a quick cut.
You get a quick cut, but you get her kind of screaming, but then blood splattering all over the shower curtain.
Right. You get a nice blood splatter on the curtain.
Yeah. And dude, I mean, let me ask you something. Did it ever occur to you that this was a set? Like, I assumed that they were on location. They had rain machines, and I assumed some of the CGI in the background was to give the clouds and stuff like that. I never thought that this was all a set.
No, there's some great locations in Nevada on the border of like Nevada, California, and that look like this to me, like motels in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really great set. It looks real.
I would hope that like the set designer for this would actually be up for something, an Academy Award or something, because it's holy shit.
Right.
Even this back part where she's walking around in the quote unquote desert, like this is all a part of the set.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. I meant to mention this earlier, but when many of the rooms are adjoined rooms, they have doors that separate them. So when Lou and Ginny are quote unquote sleeping, Lou's actually looking at Paris's door because their room is next to each other.
Right.
George's room, George and Ed have adjoined rooms, and the door is open. Yeah. And Ed comes in and checks on Alice, and then George says, "Did you hear that?" And that's when Ed goes outside to check on what the sound was of the scream, and he sees the little curtain hooks on the ground, almost like breadcrumbs leading him, which is purposely leading him into the laundry room. When he gets to the laundry room, he hears a banging sound in the dryer. As he gets closer to it, the sound gets more and more deafening. And then he opens up the dryer door, and it's Caroline's head clunking around in the dryer.
Good looking head. And by the way, K&B Effects did the effects for this. That head was fantastic.
Yeah, reminded me of
My Bloody Valentine.
My Bloody Valentine. Yeah,
yep.
Exactly.
Same. Except that was a heart. It was just the heart, right? Or the whole body. It was the whole body, wasn't it?
I think it was the whole body. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the heart was in the heart box. Yeah.
That's right. Yep. The heart was in the heart box. But yeah, definitely vibes of My Bloody Valentine. But yeah, the head is awesome looking.
Yeah. And this is great too. Like, and unfortunately, Caroline's the first to die. Rebecca De Mornay, rest in peace.
Yep.
Larry's there with Ed and Rhodes at this point. Larry freaks out. Larry's got a bat, by the way, and that bat will play a role later on in the movie.
Yep.
Ed and Rhodes are very calm. Makes sense that Rhodes would be, but why is Ed? Well, we'll get to that in a second as well. And as they're looking inside the dryer, Rhodes notices something in there. Ed says, "What the hell are you doing?" Rhodes says, "There's something in the dryer." And he gives Ed like a little tool to fish out what it is. And then Larry says to Ed, "You a cop?" And Ed says, "I was."
Yeah.
And then at that point, Rhodes pulls out a blood-soaked room key number 10.
But I thought he was going to put them in 10. Remember?
And so Larry says, "Oh man, that's fucked up." And Ed says, "Was she in room 10?" And Rhodes goes, "I am."
Oh, that's right. So the keys don't actually sometimes match their actual.
No, they match the order of the death.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. You're right.
We'll figure it out by the end of this breakdown. So now they go back.
Just both watch it like multiple times within the last.
I know. We'll figure it out. We go. Everybody, Rhodes, Ed, and Larry go back to room 10, and now Maine, aka Jake Busey, is gone. We now cut to the judge's office, where the judge is showing up, complaining that he had a hell of a drive to get there, and everybody's there. The DA, the defense attorney, et cetera, et cetera. The judge goes over, there's a stenographer there, isn't your buddy a stenographer?
Yeah,
Luke?
Bert.
Or Bert.
Yeah.
Bert. Bert's a, yeah.
Bert's a court stenographer. What's up, Bert? Shout out to our buddy Bert. But I think he does it in the courtroom, and he has like a little thing he talks into. I don't think they do the typewriter thing anymore. I think they talk into a box and then have to like transcribe it later, essentially.
That's interesting. Yeah, I would think it gets easier as the technology gets better.
I still think it's a pretty time-consuming thing. I think the bulk of his job is the transcribing later is what is kind of takes forever to do.
Yeah, it makes sense. I do not envy your job, Bert, at all. So
no, and it's taken its toll on his soul as well. Just hearing day in and day out the horrors of humanity.
I think that Bert doesn't envy our job breaking these movies down.
Probably not.
No. So for the judge says, let's get on with this. And he says, in the matter of Malcolm Rivers versus the state of Nevada, for purposes of evidentiary review as prescribed by the Supreme Court of the state of Nevada, this hearing recognizes. And then as he starts to go on, the defense lawyer interrupts and says, with all due respect, my client's not here. He has the right to be present. And the judge says he has precious few rights. He's 24 hours from execution. And the defense lawyer says, but in order to demonstrate his mental state, Your Honor, we need... And the judge says, his mental state? Do you know what time it is? You think I got time for bullshit? I'm sure you're pleased those justices dragged me into a review of a case I already presided over. I already decided. But I'm pissed off and insulted, okay? So when your boy gets here, you do whatever you want with him. But in the name of decency, state your goddamn case. Someone get me a coffee. Black.
Dude, Donnie Darko's dad is great in that little monologue right there. I loved him. I actually really like the scenes that are in the real world. I think they're enjoyable.
Yeah, it's good. And it, it's your little courtroom Law and Order SVU type bullshit going on.
Yeah.
Cut back to everybody gathered in room 3, Ed's room, and Paris is asking what's going on. Ginny's freaking out. Will someone please tell me what happened? And Ed goes, listen up. There was an accident tonight. And Larry says, that's police talk for someone got their fucking head caved in. And Ed goes, Caroline Suzanne was murdered. And Paris says, who's that? Ed says, the actress I was driving. Who's Frida? She's my secretary. Who are you? I'm Frida's boss. George says, where did this happen? Ed says, we don't know exactly. We can't find her body. And Larry mutters, not all of it anyway.
Yeah.
And Ed says, Larry's great, by the way. John Hawkes is low key. Like, again, I've said that 3 times. The best part of this movie.
Yeah, no, dude, I completely agree with you. He's kind of doing his John Hawkes thing, but I mean, like I've said before, I like his shtick, and I think he's doing a great job here. And he, again, he's young, he's good looking. It's a good role for him. It's fun, and he has a lot of fun stuff coming as well with this character.
He sure does. So Ed says, as long as we stay calm, we'll be fine. Officer Rhodes is outside right now, who's transporting a convict. And Larry says, who escaped? He fucking escaped. And Jenny's like, what? Freaking out.
Mind blown.
And Paris says to Larry, she's like, why don't you shut up and let him talk? And Larry says, this is my place, ho. I'll say what I goddamn please.
Ho. It's so, again, some of it's cliche, but it kind of makes sense as to he's probably getting all of these ideas from the television shows and whatnot that he's seen.
Right. Ginny's freaking out at this point, and she tells Lou she wants to leave, but Lou's kind of blowing her off. He's like, we got to stay here. And then Ed walks. So Ginny's over by like the door of out of the room. Lou's kind of in the opposite direction. And Ed walks by Lou and like whispers, you should put your arm around your girlfriend, Lou.
I like that.
Yeah. And then Lou gets upset and he goes, she's my wife. And then Ed's telling everyone to stay here. And he tells Larry to come with him. And Larry's like, I don't want to go. And Paris is like, you take me with you. Ed says to Paris, you have to stay here. You got to keep everybody calm, basically. And Larry says, I'm not taking orders from a professional slut. And Larry storms off. He just takes off, right? Ed asks Rhodes, what are they exactly chasing here? And Rhodes says, multiple homicide. Cut back to Paris, Lou, and Ginny, and George, and Alice on the bed, who's still dying.
A slow death.
Slow death. And Timmy has to go to the bathroom. And George is like, go ahead, Tim, I'll be right here. And he goes into the bathroom, and George is like looking at Ginny and everybody else. And he's uncomfortable. And he's like, his mother usually does all this. And Lou kind of like smirks. And I'm like, dude, the little kid's got to go pee. What's the big deal? Who cares?
Yeah. He's kind of an a-hole.
He is an a-hole for sure. Paris is making small talk with Lou. She asks Lou how long they've been married. Lou goes 9 hours, spur of the moment kind of thing. Lou asks Paris where she came from, and she says Vegas, just like they did. Ginny suddenly out of nowhere says, we need to leave. Lou gets upset. He's like, I'm just talking. She goes, no, we need to get out of here. Something's happening. And I need to get out of here.
Yeah, and she goes running out of there.
Paris goes, everything's going to be fine. And Ginny goes, no, it's not. And she runs off. Lou runs after her. As she's running off to her room, they're screaming at each other in the rain outside. And Ginny's like, you don't own me, Lou. And he goes, I own what's inside of you.
Or half of it, at least.
And Ginny goes, you don't own any part of me or my baby. And he goes, really? Well, why the hell did I marry you then? She's starting to pack, and Lou's trying to stop her. He goes, we're not leaving here. There's no place to go. I know this sucks, but there's a flood out there. And then Ginny reveals at that moment she's not pregnant. And Lou's like, wait, what? She's like, I'm not pregnant. I lied. He goes, what are you talking about? I saw the test. And he says, why would you do that to me? She goes, because Allison saw you at the Hawk with that fucking girl.
And then she runs into the bathroom, like
slams
crying,
the door,
screaming, slams the door shut. And
he's
like,
what?
Oh my God.
And that's when Lou goes, Jesus, what are we like? We were like 15.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he says, Jesus, what are we, 15?
Yeah.
It's like, and again, the first time I'm watching this, Ginny, for me, takes a massive dip here into the completely annoying category. But again, I'm just saying this a million times, but sorry, sound like a broken record. But once you know that it's all in his head, I get this is one of the biggest passes I give, because I'm like, well, first off, Rivers was it Malcolm Rivers? I mean, he's a guy, so I don't think he's just kind of in his head making these women and girls, because she's supposed to be a little bit younger, and I would say Alice is a woman, she's more of a girl. I think he in his head is just playing them out like he thinks that they would be, but
right.
But meaning there's not a lot of depth to them, because in his head there's not a lot of depth to them. I think there's more depth to the male characters, because in his head that's what he can kind of fill in the blanks. I think he as a character, Malcolm Rivers, has a hard time filling in the blanks because he's not a woman, he's not a female. So I think the female characters in this movie are a bit more cut out, like they're a bit more two-dimensional versus three-dimensional, and I think that's by design.
Oh yeah, totally, 100% agree. 100% agree.
But yeah, Ginny does act like a 15-year-old in this scene.
Yeah, she does. There's a quick cut, by the way, while they're arguing, to Ed in what we're to assume is Larry's trailer, finding a bunch of smut mags.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it's Corey's trailer.
Yeah, it's in my trailer. It's like busty and high society. Dude, all of the early 2000 magazines that I remember from when I worked at the video store, because we also sold magazines too.
I love how Corey's like, when I worked at the video store, I saw those, versus going to a store to buy those.
No, I didn't have to buy them. I could steal them.
Cut back to Lou and Ginny continuing to argue back and forth, and then suddenly it gets quiet. You hear Lou say, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? It's like session 9.
Yeah.
And suddenly Lou starts banging on the door, and he's yelling to Ginny to open the door. And she's saying, stop it. She's screaming at him to stop it. And he's like yelling, go, open the door. And then suddenly it's quiet.
There's a scene that I actually think Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake ripped off, because at the beginning, when Sarah Polly is in the bathroom and her husband had already been, bit and everything, she leans up right near the door to listen, and there's like that sound pause even for us, and then boom, he hits the door and she goes flying back. That's literally the same thing happens here with Jenny. Like there's a break and Lou, yelling at her, so she kind of walks up and puts her ear against the door, and of course right when that happens, he hits the door. And I was like, wow, I do think Zack Snyder kind of ripped off that little jump scare.
Yeah, I agree. Potentially. Yeah. Or
yeah.
Which came first, the chicken or the...
zombie.
No, well, wasn't when was the Dawn of the Dead remake? Wasn't that around? Wow, actually, wasn't that around 2005? Hold on, I'm actually curious now. 2004. So it's a year after this. So I wouldn't be surprised if he saw this in the theater and was like, "Oh, that's a good little gag, a good little jump scare," you know? And I think it probably just happened on set when she's in the bathroom there, but I'm pretty sure he drew from this.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's a possibility. Quick cut back to Ed in the trailer finding knives, and then a bunch of knives on the table in the trailer, but one of the knives is missing from the sheath. All the other knives are sheathed except for one sheath that's missing a knife. Cut back to Ginny opening up the door and looking around and seeing blood, suddenly looking for Lou, asking for Lou, turning around and seeing Lou Dog all cut up and dead, knifed.
Big rips to Lou Dog.
Number 2, death number 2 of the evening. She freaks out, goes back in the bathroom. The door, someone's trying to grab the door, and she pulls it shut and locks it, screaming, "Help, help, help." She runs to the back window of the bathroom, opens it up, jumps out the window and into Rhodes.
Before I watched this movie and I was just looking at the cover, I had a flash. And that's when I was like, I sort of think I remember this movie. I had a flash of like someone crawling out of a bathroom window and being grabbed by someone else. So I was like, was that in this movie? And then, yeah, it's this scene right here that I remember.
You're one of your multiple personalities.
Yup. You can't, it doesn't show up well on audio, but I'm doing the blinking and the looking around a lot.
I'm going to get canceled for that.
Well, did we talk about the fact that Pruitt, it's like it's an affliction that he has where his eyes, it's a medical thing, like where his eyes can't sort of stay focused, they bounce around a lot. I think in some movies, like in this movie, he kind of pushes it forward and kind of does a lot with it. I don't think it's as noticeable all the time, but he kind of makes it noticeable in this movie. But it is a medical condition that he has.
Well, yeah, and I just realized, I think he was in Red Heat, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. I think that's where I might have brought him up on our discussion,
Okay.
80s Kids Unite discussion.
Yes, good
when
point.
We talked about our favorite Arnold movies.
That wasn't one of them.
That wasn't one of them. I moved it for twins. I switched it for twins, everybody.
Did a little switcheroo.
Switcheroo. Anyways, Ed and Rhodes run into Ginny and Lou's room while Paris is comforting Ginny. And Lou Dog is dead in the corner.
And I kind of put down on here that Lou's death is kind of whatever. Of all the deaths, his is the most whatever.
Well, he's kind of a whatever. Never mind.
Yeah, no, he's whatever from beginning to end.
He was on Dawson's Creek playing student number 38. Hey, a job's a job. Anyways, cut to Maine, a.k.a. Jake Busey, who's in the rain running through the desert. And he's all turned around and he sees lights up ahead and runs towards those lights. He runs into.
Can I say he's not all turned around? He's running
the other direction. Yeah.
Right, but yeah, we see the motel behind him, and in front of him is lights and stuff like that. And so we are directly told that he's leaving the motel, which is why this is going to be, what happens in a few seconds.
Right. Because he runs towards said lights and it winds up in a diner.
Which we'd never seen the diner by the motel, so we don't know technically at first.
And then he looks out the window of the diner and realizes he's back at the motel. Do you remember that song? Back at the motel.
And this is when I texted Zach. I was like, oh, I'm at the 45-minute mark. So this is like literally halfway through the movie. And I was like, oh, I remember what the twist is. But if you've never seen it, this is that thing where it's telling you right away. Now, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Something supernatural.
Supernatural.
Something is happening. And again, the only thing they're pushing forward, and they'll kind of push it forward a little bit more, but the only thing they're pushing forward is the tribal burial ground.
Yes. And as Maine is kind of freaking out a little bit in the diner, he starts to back away from the window and walks right into Ed and Rhodes, who beat the holy hell out of Maine. The two of them together.
They rain blows down upon him. I mean, Ed punches him in the back of the head at one point. I was like, that had to have hurt your hand.
We're gonna rain on you, Maine.
Yeah, they beat the shit out of Jake Busey.
At that moment, cut back to room 3/4. And, Ginny, Paris, Alice, George, and Timothy are in there. George is looking out the window and he's like kind of assured. And he's like, they caught him. And Paris says, you hear that? Like, that's supposed to make Ginny feel better. Her fiance is her husband's still dead, right?
Yeah.
And then cut back to Larry's now with Rhodes and Ed, and they're keeping him in the diner. And Ed's like, why are we keeping him in here? And Ed says, where would you prefer? And then George and Paris run over to the diner. Rhodes says to Paris, he's like, what are you doing here? Ed says, I told you to stay in 3. Rhodes is like referring to what happened to Lou and Ginny earlier in the movie. When he says, what were you doing out there with them? And she's like, they were having a fight. I was trying to get them back inside. And then Ed says to Rhodes, can you try the radio again? He's like, that annoying guy. Can you try it again? No.
Yeah.
And Rhodes goes, yeah, I'll go try it. Ed tells Larry to stay and watch Maine, and tells Paris to go back to room 3 and then keep everybody cool. And Paris says, where are you going to go? And Ed just says, just do it, please. Paris storms off. Larry goes, Ed, I don't know if I'm comfortable with guard duty per se. And Ed says, he's unconscious, Larry. He's tied to a post. And he is. He's tied to one of the beams in the diner. In a chair, by the way. Cut back to Ed now in the office of the motel, taking disposable cameras from a counter display. Cut to Alice in bed, who's dying still, but then suddenly she comes to, and she comes to and she whispers, Timothy. Timothy gets excited and he runs over to his mom. George notices and starts freaking out. Oh God, dear God. And Alice says, where are we? And George says, we had an accident. We're in a motel. He goes to get Alice some more aspirin. As he's leaving to go get more aspirin, Paris asks George, can you watch Ginny for a minute? And George kind of dismisses her and he says, she needs more aspirin, and he leaves. Paris says to Ginny, I got to get something from my room. It's very important. And she leaves. Cut to Larry in the diner with his baseball bat watching the rain pouring down. And he sees Paris running across the courtyard to her room. Cut to Ed taking pictures of the crime scene. And as he's doing that, he's like shaking his head and he's kind of getting like a little dazed, right? This is the hint to tell that something's off, right? Cut back to Larry, who's in the kitchen, and he's working on the freezer door. And Maine's like, what's wrong, buddy? He comes to and he says, what's in the kitchen? Larry's trying to ignore him. And Maine goes, come on, you could tell me. What's in there? Larry tells him to shut up. Shut up.
He's like, I'm good at keeping secrets. I've got a real whopper of one.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I'm glad you wrote that down.
Now, I wonder, is he referring to the whopper of a secret, meaning he knows what's happening? Or does he know about the body in the freezer?
When Maine says that? Are you asking
Yeah, when
that?
Maine says that, yeah.
I think Maine's referring to him and Rhodes both being...
Okay. Like he knows the whole giant kit and caboodle type.
Yeah, because now he's taking the fall for everything and Rhodes is looking like the good guy, right?
Yeah.
Cut back to Paris in her room. She's going to get her cash and she stuffs the money in her bag. And then there's someone in a doorway. Someone in the doorway is Ed. She gets upset and Ed says, what are you doing? She's like, you scared me to death. Ed says, I asked you a question. What are you doing in here? And she goes, getting shit that's mine. What are you doing? And Ed says, excuse me? She goes, I don't get to ask you a question? He goes, I'm taking photos. There's been 2 murders in the last 2 hours, and I thought maybe before all the evidence was destroyed. And she goes, that's no answer. Ed says, what are you talking about? She goes, you are a limo driver, so I'll ask you again. What are you doing? Looking to win some Beyond the Call of Duty limo driver merit badge? Tell me if I got it wrong, but you're not on the job anymore. You don't have to be a hero. There's a real active duty cop here, if you haven't noticed. And Ed goes, yeah, well, this active duty cop already managed to lose a convicted killer. So maybe you can find it in your heart to forgive me if I try to pitch in.
Yeah, and I like how this is when she says, like, you're a real complicated cat, aren't you? And, you know, he's like, no, I'm not really. But I do think that is telling in that the male characters are a bit more in depth than the female characters, because I think that Malcolm Rivers can relate to them better. I think he gives the males more of a backstory than he does the females.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Except for Paris, because Paris is modeled after his mother, so therefore he can give her a little bit more bulk than he can give maybe Jenny or Alice, who Alice really does nothing and Jenny just screams. But like Paris, he can relate her to his mother, so he can give her a little bit more like fleshed out character. But any other women, Jenny and Alice, are literally one dimensional. They're not even like two dimensional.
That's a good point. Yeah. Look at you breaking it down, breaking down the psyche. They continue more kind of semi-flirtatious banter because she's like,
yeah.
When were you born? And he says May. And she goes, oh, me too. Taurus.
And if you remember all the way back at the very beginning of the credits of the movie, they do mention that Malcolm Rivers was born in May.
Right. She asks him more about his backstory, and Ed says that he was a cop. He says, one day I got a cop from Los Angeles, and he says he took a medical leave. He says, one day I got this call. A jumper, 15-year-old Mexican girl, on a ledge 8 stories over Wilcox. She's pregnant and infected with AIDS.
By the way, I know where Wilcox is, that road.
Oh, yeah. I asked her to come with me, come into my arms, and she turned to me and said, she asked me why she should bother living, and then he says it in Spanish. And Paris says, well, what did you tell her? He goes, I was trained to tell her about the people who'd miss her, about the dreams ahead, but for a second, I hesitated, and she saw it.
Then she spread her arms and was basically, she jumped.
Right.
I like how he says she was pregnant with AIDS, and basically, and I love how he says like something like she was truly one of the doomed, but like it was too perfect of a scenario that it had to have been created in somebody's head.
Yeah, exactly. Because he's like, in that moment, I honestly couldn't think of a single optimistic thing to say to her. It was just a second.
Yeah. But also, I love how John Cusack delivers that she was truly one of the doomed. He kind of says it looking off in the distance type of thing.
Yeah, I love that too. Ed kind of smiles a little bit and moves away. And if you notice, his eyes are darting back and forth a little bit too.
Pruitt's like, are you mocking me?
Right. So remember, the doors are open, right? The doors are open to the rooms. So Paris's room is open to Ginny and Lou's room. And Lou looks past her and he sees something in Lou's hand. He walks over to Lou and pulls out another key, and it's number 9. Yep. He looks behind her on Lou's door, and it's a rusty number. Well, it's the 6 that flipped upside down, so it looks like a 9. Paris just says, like, what? From there, you cut to Ed and Paris looking down the hallway to Rhodes' car. Ed yells for Rhodes, and Rhodes is in the car with the radio, and he's like, it's just more static. And Ed says, where's the key from the actress? This was on Lou, and he shows her number, and he shows him number 9 to Rhodes. Is your guy some kind of a psycho? Some kind of a countdown killer? And Rhodes says, I'd be surprised if he knew how to count. From there, Ed, Paris, and Rose go back to the diner. They see Larry quietly moving away from the diner. He's like away from this office, and he's got like a money box, and he's heading towards the back of the motel. Ed yells to Larry, and Larry kind of freezes for a moment, and he's like, get over here.
And Larry definitely looks like a kid with his hand caught in the cookie jar type of thing.
Yeah.
He's like that,
Even the way he talks, because he's like, I just want to get something.
I was just getting
something. It's my stuff. And Ed goes, where do you think you were going? He goes, I just, and they go, get the fuck inside. And they push him into the diner. And suddenly when they go in the diner, they see Maine with the baseball bat that Larry was holding shoved down the throat of Maine's body.
Yeah, that's another K&B effects right there. I thought maybe that was, Gary or Jake Busey with his head back, but no, that's a full-on dummy, a made-up Jake Busey, who one of the producers kept in his closet. He wanted to keep it, kept in his closet at work until a cleaning lady discovered it, scared the shit out of her, and they had to dispose of it.
Oh, that's interesting.
What were you doing with that to begin with?
I want to see how big his throat was.
Right. Well, it's weird because I literally just read an article about the fact that Arnold Schwarzenegger has to pay $1 every year to Warner Brothers to keep because he kept the Iceman suit or Mr. Freeze suit from Batman and Robin, but he keeps it. He has to pay them one. I mean, obviously there's like, yeah, you can take it, but legality wise, he has to pay them every year to have it.
Interesting. All right, so you've got now a baseball bat in the throat. Victim number 3.
3,
right?
Yeah.
3.
And so it's like his head is cocked back and the baseball bat is just straight down his throat and his neck is all like engorged.
It's hilarious because Larry's like, I didn't kill him. And then Rhodes is like, why'd you kill my con? Ed goes, see if he's still alive. And Rhodes is like, he's still alive. Are you kidding me? And Ed goes, Larry, I've never been one to leap at the obvious, but I'm having a little trouble seeing past that bat of yours sticking out of his fucking throat. And Larry's like, I didn't do it. And Ed's like, and then why were you acting like a freak out there? Rhodes is like, why'd you kill my con, Larry? And Larry's like, I didn't kill him. I went out for a second. I don't know. I just left the bat here. Rhodes is like, bullshit. This is Ray Liotta at his fired up finest.
Oh, it's great.
They hear a jingling sound and Rhodes has the key to number 8 in his hand. And Rhodes is like, look at this, Larry. 10, 9, 8. Larry's like, those aren't my keys. You can't call them that. That's like leading the witness or something. And he's like, look, these are my keys. And he holds up his keys. And then
they're more like they're traditional, like they're on a keychain type of thing. Or like one of those round hoops, you know.
And as he does, something falls from Larry's pocket. And it's Caroline's wallet, the big Gucci wallet that she had earlier in the beginning of the movie with all her money. And he goes, okay, yes, I took her wallet afterwards, after she died. I confess to that, okay? But I didn't kill her, and I didn't kill him. He was alive when I split. He was saying all this shit, wigging me out. Everyone's there in the room, by the way. George and Paris and everybody. He grabs Paris at that moment. Paris screams. He's got a knife on her. Tells everybody to get back. Ed says, let go over, Larry. And then suddenly Timothy is there as well with George. And Ed says, George, get him out of here. Ed continues to tell Larry to let go of Paris. And he's like, shut up, stay back. I didn't hurt anyone. I didn't hurt no one, not anyone. I don't like cheap fucking whores. And if you come one step closer, I will not hesitate. I swear to Christ.
And I like where she like kind of knocks him back. She kind of kicks back, knocks him back, but then it kind of knocks open the freezer. And then the freezer, the dead guy comes falling out. And I obviously when he's falling, it's an actor, but then when he's hitting the ground, it's not, because he literally hits the ground with his face without moving, and you couldn't do that. But that was a great little, just a tiny little nod to the fact that, yeah, he's just a frozen stiff.
He's a frozen stiff, and he falls on top of Paris, and Paris is freaking out, you know, get him off me, get him off me.
Yeah.
And at that moment, that's when Larry runs off, and he exits the motel, goes to his truck, which is covered in plastic, pulls the plastic off, starts the truck, tries to get out of there. Ed's out there yelling at Larry. George walks out of his room. What's going on out here? You hear Larry yelling, I didn't do shit. Get out of my way. And he takes off. And little Timothy walks out of his room as well. And he's in the road. George sees that he's in the road. He pushes Timothy out of the way, but gets smacked by the truck, slamming the truck. The truck slams into George against the wall of one of the motel rooms, killing George instantly.
Yeah, that was cool. I always like when people get like slammed by a car into something else, so they're essentially pinned there, you know? That was a good kill. Very good kill.
Very good kill. And then suddenly you hear thunder rumble, and you go back to the courtroom.
Hey everybody, Corey here. I just want to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
Hey everybody, I'm Tim.
And I'm Dean.
And we're the hosts of Talking Back. We're a retro-based podcast covering movies, comics, video games, and more.
Check us out every Monday where we hit the rewind button and dig into some of our favorite content from the past. We like to keep things fun, lighthearted, and informative.
Do you feel like you need more nostalgia in your life? Then check out Talking Back. We're available everywhere podcasts are found.
And now, back to the show.
The defense attorney saying, you know, firstly, an insanity plea was refused by the court despite the fact my client is a certifiable Axis 4 disassociative. To this day, he remains unaware of the crimes for which he was convicted. As you know, in 1986, the United States Supreme Court ruled states cannot execute a person who does not understand why he's being put to death. This all makes sense to me, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
And the judge says, well, he signed a confession, counselor. And the detective who's in the room as well, says he didn't just sign it. He dictated it to me. He told me exactly how he killed each and every. The district attorney kind of dismisses what he just said and says a confession was accepted into evidence despite the fact that it was not signed nor dictated by Malcolm Rivers. Thirdly, Malcolm's diaries were found misfiled in state evidence. Important to note that the spectacular changes in handwriting style, tone, point of view. And while he's saying this, the judge is looking at the diaries of Malcolm Rivers, and it's all these different styles of handwriting, big,
very
small.
Seven-esque, you know.
Very Seven-esque. The defense attorney calls on Dr. Malik to continue, and the doctor says there's no universally efficacious treatment for dissociative identity disorder. In theory, one must attempt to move a patient towards integration, a folding of their fractured psyche.
Yeah, and actually that's something that's even becoming more in 2024, a modern idea that maybe you can use like psychedelics and stuff like that. Like we're talking like small doses of mushrooms and stuff. And instead of trying to tell them that these aren't all real, but it's like, let's actually start to like address each one and validate and try to bring them together essentially. And this movie does something similar, except they're trying to kill off each of the different, the procedures to kill off each of the different, we'll find that out actually in about 10 minutes. But still, it's like, it's interesting that they don't have all the answers then, and I'm sure we don't have all the answers now, and I'm sure in 20 more years we'll learn more about it, but it's like an ever-evolving, procedure for multiple personality disorders and stuff. But I don't think that this movie is, like, egregious. Like, I don't think it's, like, super wrong in how it's trying to deal with it.
No, I agree. I totally agree. And this is the moment in the movie where you see Malcolm Rivers for the first time. He's being wheeled from an elevator through the hallway down to the judge's quarters.
Yeah.
But then you cut back to room 3/4, where Larry is now being tied to a chair. It's funny when he's doing that because he's in the middle of talking and then suddenly he goes, ow.
Yeah.
Because Larry's like, it was an accident. I didn't kill him. I found him like that. Talking about the dead body in the freezer.
Whose name was also Larry, by the way.
Exactly. He goes, look, just listen. I was in Vegas last month. I lost everything. And I was driving west, and I was running on empty. So I pulled over here, and there was no one at the station. So I came in the office, walked right in, and there's the manager sitting at the desk right there, face down, in a banquet pot pie, dead, heart attack. I don't know. He's been sitting there for who knows how long. So I'm moving him to the floor, and that's when this auto parts salesman pulls up looking for a room. I just took a key from the wall, and I gave him a room. Maybe that was wrong, but I was broke, and that's what I did.
That's what I did. He gave me $30. That's what I did.
Right. He's like, I came back here and I moved Larry's body. His name was Larry too. I moved him into
I love that. Yeah. I love how he just drops that. His name was Larry too.
I moved him into the freezer because it was hot out. I thought it was the best place for him till his family or someone came. Only no one did, except more guests. So I checked them in too. So they all seemed happy. So
they all seemed happy.
Rhodes is like, this is a total crock of shit. He's like, no, it's not. Rhodes is like, admit it. You killed him. Just like my con. Just like her husband. Just like the actress. Admit it. He's like, please stop. I can't take this anymore.
And I love this is the John Hawkes that I love. The fact that he can sound so desperate, but still inject these little pieces of humor, and it all just works. The whole thing about it works. And he's still like, he remains likable too as a character. Like, I think we can all agree. We all know, like, I think the viewers all know that he didn't do it. Other than he killed George, yes, but yeah. I think we all are on his side. But just the desperation and the high pitchedness of it, it's great. This is the John Hawkes that I fucking love.
By the way, George being victim number 4 of the killings. Okay,
which we will find out in a little bit.
Yes, and hopefully we'll have key number 7 in his hand. Timothy's now crying. Ginny's telling everybody to stop and calm down. And Paris says, I don't want to sound like a fool, but his story kind of sounds true.
Yeah, it's like, she's like, it's so preposterous that it kind of has to be true.
Right, and this is when Ginny says, maybe it's the burial ground. Read the brochure that's in there. It's all around us. 100 years ago, government moved these Indians here. 200 of them died because there was no water. And then this is when Rhodes goes, and now what? Now they're coming back to life like sea monkeys?
It's like
Give me a break, sweetheart.
That's great. I love that.
And Ed says to Rhodes, he's like, come on, easy there. And he's like, why don't you take it easy? You've been trying to run this show all night, pointing fingers, handing out orders. You blame my guy for everything, then he gets himself killed. We all saw him run down George. He had your actress's wallet in his fucking pocket. And Ginny's like, please stop. He's like, you want a plan? I got a plan. No one's going to move. We're going to stay here just like this in this room. No one's going to leave. No one's going to move. And if it's him and he tries something, I'll shoot him. And if something's out there and they come in here, I'll shoot them. And if one of us tries anything, I'm going to shoot him. And Ed's like, I get it.
You're going to shoot everybody. I get it.
Kill everybody.
Yeah, the energy's, at this point, the energy's so high.
Right. So high. Timmy goes into his mother's room. And then Ginny continues. She goes, you remember that movie where 10 strangers came to an island and they all died one by one? It turned out they weren't strangers. They had a connection. And Larry goes, yeah, they all messed with the wrong guy and he was getting revenge. Rhodes tells him to shut up. She's like, I'm just saying, maybe there's some sort of connection between all of us.
Yeah, so that movie that she's referring to is called And Then There Were None. And it's based on an Agatha Christie novel. That
10 Little Indians, right?
Yes. Yep. Which is basically what this is sort of based on as well. And it's all the same concept, except I think that movie had a bit more of a happier ending than this one does.
And side note, the Agatha Christie story, 10 Little Indians, I think officially has been changed to And Then There Were None because it does not want to be offensive.
So the book was called 10 Little Indians. The movie is called And Then There Were None. They've now changed the name of the book to Now There Were None.
Yes.
Or And Then There Were None, whatever it is.
Because I was tutoring a kid that was reading it, and then the beginning of the book, they note that the original title was called 10 Little Indians, but to be sensitive, say, okay. Whatever, it is what it is, you know?
Yeah.
Whether you like that or not, it's the times we live in. So Ginny says, I'm just saying maybe there's a connection between all of us. And Ed says, like, what? And Larry says, we're all in Nevada. Rhodes says, shut up.
I love Larry's little injections into this conversation.
Me too. Paris says, where were you headed with your con when you pulled in here? Rhodes says, Carson City. Paris says, I was going home to Florida. She says to Ed, where are you going? Ed says, I was going to L.A. Larry says, hey, I was born in Florida. Rhodes points his gun kind of at Larry, and he's like, Jesus, I was just talking. And Rhodes says, since you've been in that chair, no one's died, so I suggest you shut the fuck up.
It's like, but I like how Larry's like, but since we've all been here, no one's died. It's all of us.
Yeah, exactly. And then Paris says, where in Florida, Larry? Larry says, Polk County. And Paris says, that's where I was born. What town? Larry says, Mulberry. Paris says, Frostproof. And Larry goes, no wonder you left. And Ed goes, there's a town called Frostproof? Paris says, yeah, they grow oranges. The name kind of doubles as a slogan. Larry says, I danced hallelujah the day I left Polk. Why would you want to go back? She goes, I found a grove for sale on the net. 9 acres, 1,200 trees, limes, oranges. According to the realtor, the soil needs a few tills of phosphorus, and the lanes need reeding, but it's good land. Ed's kind of looking at her, and she goes, what? And Ed goes, sounds kind of nice.
The whole Malcolm Rivers kind of being sort of, I guess, like autistically obsessed with towns and stuff like that. So, you know, him, I think that's all real, like, you know, Frostproof and stuff like that. That's him. That's Malcolm Rivers coming out through all of them talking.
Totally. Then suddenly they hear a sound of like a clinking sound coming from Alice's room where she's laying down. Ed goes to check on Alice and she's dead. Obviously, Timothy freaks out, and Ginny kind of tries to console him, and there's another room key on the ground. Ed picks it up, and it's number 6. And Ed says, it doesn't make sense. She died from an accident. And Paris says, George was an accident. And she goes, where's 7?
Cut to Paris reversing the truck out.
Yeah,
and I love just the crumpled mass of George's body sort of flopping to the ground.
Just crunched and blood everywhere. And Rhodes reaches in his pocket and pulls out key number 7. So George was the 4th to die with key number 7. So 10987. That's 4.
Yeah.
Then Alice is number 6. She's victim number 5 with key number 6.
Right, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So Larry's like trying to get himself loose from the bindings from the chair, and he leans out from, like, he can see from the doorway of the room, and he goes, "I told you it wasn't me." And then and Paris says, "I mean, I saw what happened. I was right there. I saw him run out. No one could have known he was going to do that. No one." And Ginny goes, "No one human."
Yeah.
And Rhodes is like,
yeah.
"So what is this now? What, ghosts getting their revenge? Maybe it's the ghost of the guy Larry shoved in the freezer."
That I like. That I wish that was actually the twist.
Ed turns to Paris and says, "Listen, you take her, Ginny, and the kid, and you get out of here." And Ginny's like, "There's nowhere to go.
Just drive, baby. Just drive."
Ed asks how much gas she has, and she has half a tank. He goes, "You could drive till dawn. Just keep on moving. When you get to where it's flooded, you turn around and go the other way. Look, I'm sorry I didn't do this sooner. I don't understand what's happening here." He's trying to take care of them. And Larry's like getting free, and he's like, whoa, what's going on? They can't leave. And Rhodes says, "What are you doing?" to Ed. He goes, "They're leaving." And Rhodes says, "You can't let a bunch of suspects run out after 4 people." And Ed interrupts and goes, "Do you really think they're suspects, Rhodes? I don't. And if it's not them, then they're safest where we aren't." And Rhodes is like, "I'm telling you, they're not leaving." But at that point, that's when Ginny and Timothy walk off towards Ginny's car. And there's
it's Jenny's car, right? Yeah.
Like towards around the corner of the motel, like towards the front of the motel, and suddenly there's a huge explosion, CGI.
CGI explosion. But I do love how it like blows Larry over. You know, the blast wave knocks him over in the chair type of thing.
Yes, that's how he's able to get free.
Yeah, but I do kind of, I always like when an explosion, when you see the shockwave essentially.
Shockwave. And yeah, so the big explosion goes off. Larry gets free. Paris and Ed and Rhodes run over to the car, and Larry does too. And Rhodes is like, "Where the hell are they?" Because there's no bodies. There's no bodies anywhere. Larry's like, "There's no bodies in there." And Rhodes turns to Ed and he's like, "You did this. You told them to leave." Ed doesn't say anything.
And I like how someone, I don't know if it's Larry or Rhodes, but someone says, were they just like incinerated immediately or something? You know, like trying to give some sort of logical explanation to it.
Yeah, where did I write? I wrote that down. It's funny. I thought it was actually funny because it's
or
Larry.
Like something like, did they get cremated immediately or something?
Yeah.
Instantly cremated or something?
Yeah, Larry says they must have been cremated immediately or something.
Yeah,
I'm like,
something,
okay,
yeah.
Jesus. Yeah, so that's Ginny, which is victim number 6.
6, but 4.
4.
No, 6, but that's, yeah, because 6 and 9, right? So 6.
Yeah,
God damn
6. She's 6. Victim number 6.
Which is why she says it's a good number, like when she sees her room, you know,
right,
good
and
number.
she should have key number 4. Timothy 7. He should have key number 3, technically.
Yeah.
That's where we're going. Okay.
Yeah.
Keep
so
that in mind.
Yeah, there's 3 more people left. Amanda, Paris, Ed, and Rhodes are all that's left. No, Larry too. So there's 4. Okay.
Yeah, that's making sense to me. Yeah. Anyways, Paris, Ed, and Larry walk back towards the other scenes of the crime, but suddenly the bodies are gone.
Yeah.
Everybody's gone.
Yeah, even George is gone. The head is missing from, you know, Rebecca De Mornay's head is missing.
Yeah.
Lou is missing, but also not just their bodies are gone, but like all the blood from Lou on the walls is gone too.
There's no trace of anybody.
Yeah, and at this point, first time I'm watching it, I can remember back in the day, you know, I'm like, okay, this is like, are they abducted by aliens? Like something supernatural. I hadn't actually put it together that they were in Pruitt's head and you know, Malcolm Rivers' head. I thought it was more like an alien thing where, like, you know what I mean? Like we're on a bit of like a game preserve type of thing for humans, you know, to test our psychology. That's where I was going with it.
That's kind of and it's a cool theory for sure. Paris is now freaking out. She's screaming into the wild, you know, "I give up. What the hell do you want? What do you want? Answer me, you sick bastard. Whoever the hell you are, what do you want?"
Is this when like there's a power line flopping around in the parking lot too? Because there's no sort of explanation why that happens, but I like that it's there, just adding this extra layer of danger.
Yeah, so there's like a loud bang and the lights are flickering. Yeah, the electricity comes down near where the car explosion was.
Yeah.
And then Paris is screaming. She's like, "I'm going to be 30 next week and I want to go home and grow oranges." They're all together, and Larry goes, "It's your birthday next week?" "It's my birthday next week, the 10th. Paris goes, "Me too." And Rhodes says, "Me too." Paris looks at Ed and goes, "Yeah."
In great, like, smoldering John Cusack, way of how he is about it and everything.
Right.
My God. I love early 2000 John Cusack.
Me too. Cut to all of them in the office of the motel. Larry's going through the IDs of everybody that checked in because they photocopy their ID when they check in. And he's saying the names over: George and Timothy York, Caroline Suzanne, Rhodes, Maine, Ginny and Louisiana, all with the same birthdays, May 10th. What are the odds? Must be 10 trillion to 1. And Ed's blinking and he's kind of stunned. And Rhodes says, "What is it?" That's when the power goes out. And Rhodes says, "It must have been a fuse box." Rhodes races outside and Larry goes out to check on the fuse box. And that's when they notice the wire has fallen with the shooting sparks.
Yeah.
Ed's saying the names over: Ginny, Louisiana, Virginia, Louisiana. He looks up at a map on the wall and he starts reciting the poem from the beginning of the movie.
Yep.
And then suddenly you hear a doctor's voice. "Who is this? Where did you learn this poem? Who am I speaking to?"
This is right now turning into my favorite scene in the movie when Ed gets pulled into the real world.
Now you're in the judge's office and it's Ed who's in the chair being looked at as Malcolm. Yeah. Ed's blinking. He's like, "What's going on?" And the doctor's trying to speak to him, Edward. He says, "Where am I? Where am I, doc?" And the judge says, "He knows you?" And the doctor says, "He's a patient of mine." "Right, Edward? You came to see me after you had some trouble at work. You had a few blackouts. You missed our last appointment. You blacked out again." Everyone in the judge's office looks concerned. Ed says, "Am I in the hospital again? How long have I been out?" The doctor says, "What's the last thing you remember?" And he says, "Driving this actress. I was in a motel. There was a storm. I couldn't get out." Doctor says, "What happened at the motel?" "Well, people were dying. They're disappearing, this family." And he starts like running down the list. He says, "Edward, I need to show you something." He pulls out a file folder and he shows Ed a picture of Malcolm. He goes, "Do you recognize this man?" Ed says, "No." The doctor says, "Edward, this man, Malcolm Rivers, he has a very troubled life. He was convicted 4 years ago for the murder of 6 people at a roadside motel in a terrible rage." The detective is like, "He did this." And the doctor's like, "Detective, please." When faced with intense trauma, a child's mind can fracture, creating dissociative identities, alters which possess no memory of the pain and thus allow the child to inhabit them free of it. This is what happened to Malcolm. He developed a condition commonly known as multiple personality syndrome. Ed's like, "Why are you telling me this?" And the doctor says, "Because you, Edward, are one of his personalities." And Ed just smiles. And then that's when Malcolm pulls a mirror out and shows Ed that he's not Ed, but in fact, he's Malcolm Rivers. Dun, dun, dun. And then Ed / Malcolm freaks out. He's like, "What's going on? What's going on?"
Yeah,
Try to stay calm.
It's a great little like sort of camera trick because the camera's on John Cusack, but when it sort of pans down to him looking at the mirror, and then you see Pruitt, back, in the reflection, and then his reaction is great too. But boom, this is it. This is all cards are on the table. And I mean, I think this movie is fantastic. And I love the end of it too. But once you know what's going on, I'm glad that there's literally only like 12 minutes left in the movie, or at least like 12 minutes left in the motel, because at that point, okay, anyways, we'll get to like why he has to go back though.
Right, because so he's freaking out and Malcolm's trying to calm him down, but then Ed looks to the reflection in the window and sees that he's actually Malcolm and freaks out even more.
Okay, it's like, what did you do to my face?
Yeah, right.
How did I go from being hunky John Cusack to this?
And the doctor's like, "The motel doesn't exist except in Malcolm's childhood, nor do the people you met there." Malcolm's like, "You're a liar." He's like, "Consider what you know. Everyone with a name after a state. Everyone with the same birthday. The blackouts." Malcolm says, I was a cop in the Rampart Division of the LAPD for 6 years. I live in Hollywood." While this is going on, the judge flips through the deranged journals. And the doctor says, "The face you saw in the mirror, I've always seen when I talk to Edward, Paris, Larry, or anyone else you've met tonight. One of the personalities you met tonight committed those murders 4 years ago, Edward. In 19 hours, Malcolm will be put to death for their actions, unless I can convince that man," he points at the judge, "that the killer is gone. Malcolm freaks out and he's struggling with the straps, and he flashes back to Ed at the motel.
Yeah. So essentially, and this is what is good because, again, like I said, you at this point you'd be like, well, why do I care anymore? Except there is a bit of urgency to it because now Ed has to go back with the knowledge that he has to kill Rhodes, who he thinks is the killer. He has to kill him in order to save essentially himself, but also save Paris. So I like that there's still a reason to go back. It's not just a reason to go back to wrap things up. There's still a reason that Ed should go back in order to be the hero to save the day.
Exactly. So it cuts back to the hotel, and Paris is in Rhodes' car trying to get the radio that's in there, goes to get the radio and sees it's been ripped out.
So he was never on it ever. He always had it ripped out.
You get a flashback to a desert highway where Rhodes and Maine are in the back of a police car. They're both prisoners being transported. Rhodes pulls a shank from the back seat of the car and jams it into from his sock and jams it into the driving police officer, killing him dead.
That was cool. I like that.
Now you know where the blood hole came from.
Yep. And it's not a bullet hole. It's a shank hole.
Shank hole.
That's what they call my butthole.
I'm going to call Corey Shank Hole from now on. I love you, my little shank hole. And they throw the dead body of the cop in the trunk of the car. Maine has to stay in his uniform while Shankhold Rhodes is now putting the suit on.
Yeah, because Maine's like, Jake Busey's like, what do I, where's my outfit? And he's like, you're wearing it. So like, you can tell they've never been friends. They just probably met for the first time on this car ride,
Exactly. Cut back to Paris now in the rain, trying to get Larry's attention, whispering to Larry, but he doesn't hear her. She's trying to get someone's attention. Rhodes is moving towards her, though. In the rain, she starts to back up. Paris is asking about where's Ed, and out of nowhere, Larry hits Rhodes from behind with a fire extinguisher to knock him out. Larry and Paris run to Larry's truck, and Larry asks Paris for the keys to the truck. She doesn't have them. He's like, I have spares in my desk. So he runs back to the office to get them. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Rhodes is there with a gun and shoots Larry in the chest. Larry's dead. Paris now has the keys, and he's telling Paris to give him the keys, and she's like, I'm not giving you the keys. He's like, God damn it, give me the keys.
Yeah. And then she runs out of there, but I like that he shoots at her. I always like, and I'm sure it was probably CGI maybe, but I like how you see the bullet hit right where her head was, like against the wood. I always like that. I always like seeing where bullets hit when somebody shoots.
Yeah, versus just like into the darkness.
Yeah, exactly.
So she's like running away from Rhodes as he's shooting at her. She runs past the vending machines that are on the side of the motel. She runs into the vending machines and runs right into Ed. And Ed tells her to stay there by the vending machines and like stay hidden, basically.
Yeah, like he knows what he has to do.
Right. And she's like, no. And he's like, just stay here, right? At that same moment, it's kind of like a showdown. Rhodes is coming from one side of the motel, Ed's coming from the other, and they just start shooting at each other, unloading their guns.
Yeah, both taking hits.
Yep.
Well, I don't know if you picked up on it. So they get like obviously pretty close. Like Rhodes runs out of bullets. Ed, kind of gets really close to him, pops him a couple times. But they're like right on top of each other, and they take the sound out, but you can see Rhodes mouthing, I didn't do it, and Ed mouthing, I know, as he's basically firing, as Ed is firing his gun into Rhodes's, like basically his gut. But they wanted to take that sound out. I read that in the trivia on IMDb. They took the sound out so it wouldn't be like such a dead giveaway for what is going to be another sort of twist at the end. Like the twist, there isn't just the twist of everything being Malcolm Rivers. There's also another twist internally into this motel thing, and they wanted to still keep that a secret as well. So, but you can, and the first time I watched it, I didn't even actually notice it, but you can actually see, Ray Liotta mouthing, I didn't do it, and actually John Cusack mouthing, I know, as he's like pow, pow, pow into his gut.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't even pick up on that.
Yeah, because I think your eyes are just looking at the gunshot in the stomach. You're not really looking at their faces, you know?
And in my case, my eyes are looking at the notes, writing them.
Exactly, yeah.
At this point, Paris rushes over to Ed on the ground. She's trying to get him up, to get him into a hospital, to get him into the truck, but he won't budge. He's dying. There's nothing she can do for him. And she's asking, where did he go before, when she couldn't find him? She's like, tell me what you saw. Tell me what you saw. And Ed goes, I saw you in an orange grove. And then he died. Paris cries. Now you cut back to Malcolm in the judge's office, mouthing as Paris, repeating, why didn't you let me help you? What did you see?
I like that. I like seeing Malcolm saying those words out, because now we also have like sort of we understand that this is how the doctors and everybody knows what's going on in the motel, because he's also kind of like narrating it and speaking it out loud.
Exactly. Then Dr. Malik says, the question, Your Honor, is whether to convict the body or the mind. His body committed these murders, but that is true. But the person who remains inside did not. You witnessed the destruction of 10 souls tonight. 9 were innocent. 1 was guilty. The violence that existed in him is gone. The defense attorney says Malcolm belongs at the state hospital, Your Honor. And the lawyers agree. Judge says in the matter, and this is like a voiceover now, while Malcolm is getting put into a van outside of the courtroom, the court offices, like the next morning. Yeah. Judge says, in the matter of Rivers versus Nevada, it is the recommendation of this court that Mr. Rivers' execution be stayed. I'm transferring him to a state psychiatric service under the care of Dr. Malik. They put him in the back of the van. There's like a metal screen between him and Malik and the driver of the van, but there's like a door, a latch that opens up the screen.
Yeah.
And that's important. As they put Malcolm into the van, he smirks. Cut to Paris, now driving down a road in Florida, singing I Want You by Bob Dylan. I want you. Ooh, bugs. There was a comedian once. He's like, how did Bob Dylan get his voice like that? Because he didn't originally sound like that. And it's like him pretending to be Bob Dylan. He's under a tree. He's like, I'm under a tree singing a song. It's so beautiful. And then bugs start falling on his head. Oh, bugs, get these bugs off of me. Anyways, she is singing the song, and it's kind of intercut with Malcolm singing the same song, I Want You, which is very creepy to see Malcolm singing that. And then cutting to Paris doing laundry outside of her new home in Florida, hanging up clothes, and then walking to the garden in the ground nearby with a little like hoe, like little fork hoe type thing. You know.
Didn't Larry call her a hoe earlier?
Well, that's like a fork. Is it a hoe? It's not a hoe. It's like a fork.
Yeah, I don't.
It's like a 3-pronged gardening tool, not a hoe. So as she's cutting through the dirt with this fork thingy, she realizes there's something in the dirt. She pulls it out. It's a motel key. What motel key number is it? Number 1.
Yep.
She pulls the key out of the ground, and then she turns quickly, and who's standing there but little Timothy with the fork thingy in his hand. She doesn't have it anymore. And he's holding it, and he's like smacking it in his hand, very aggressively, and he looks totally annoyed. And then that's when you flash back to all the people being killed in the motel, from Caroline all the way down to George and Alice.
All the way down to Timothy walking away from the car explosion like he was in a Bad Boys movie. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that was the one and only laughable moment in the entire movie.
It's actually, he's like Devil Child, because he was the one, it shows him killing everybody, you know, stabbing Lou, the car exploding, you're right. With Maine, with the baseball bat with Maine, and then on the desert road pushing, like being the one that caused his mom to get hit by the car.
Yeah, like he moved back so that she would sort of mimic his movements, knowing that she was going to get hit. So yeah, so there's a twist on top of the twist, and that is that he's the killer the entire time, is the little boy. And I do like how then they cut back to like Malcolm, and he's like, no, so you could tell he's mentally fighting this too.
He's mentally fighting it. And at that moment, the doctor, this is my one issue I have with this movie. One of the issues I have with this movie, Dr. Malik is like asking him if he's okay. Malik looks at the driver who's just driving calmly, not even noticing anything.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't tell the driver to pull over. He just simply undoes the latch to the cage to like see if he can help Malcolm. And at that moment, that's when Timothy, in his mind, kills Paris and says,
I like he says, yeah, you gonna do it?
He goes, whores don't get a second chance.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, there it is.
And he kills Paris. She's now dead. And at that same moment, he is cuffed with chains and he wraps the chains around Dr. Malik's neck, choking him dead. You see the van drive off the side of the road into a ditch. And then as the camera kind of pans away from the wreckage, you hear Timothy now saying the poem in Timothy's voice, which we haven't heard at this point in the movie, saying the poem at the end, which I will recite one more time. When I was going up the stairs, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish he'd go away. And that is the end of Identity.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's a fun ride. It's a solid, slick thriller. I wouldn't even call it supernatural. Supernatural. But it kind of falls under that category. But, you know, like even, I do commend the filmmakers that even when they kind of do the twist ending, there is still more left at the very end, like another twist. And apparently they filmed a couple different endings, so that way it would kind of keep it a secret. It's just, and it's just when you go back and rewatch it after seeing it, it's not that the movie's less fun. It's just some of the drama between characters is ultimately moot, but like the whole idea is cool, but some of the like the stuff with the you know, what the Native American tombs, like that's moot. You know, the fight between Jenny and Lou about the baby, I mean technically it's also moot, like it doesn't matter at all. But the way the movie was crafted and the way everyone acts, it's still enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, you're right. So much of this movie is now insignificant if you really think about it. However, like I said at the onset, if the acting is good, if the story feels engaging, entertaining, then that's okay. Like you can let it go. Would I rewatch this film? I would rewatch this film. I watched it 3 times in the breakdown of this movie. Thank you, Paulette. And how dare you, Paulette? No, I'm joking. I love that it's a tight 90 minutes versus a stretched out 2 hours, because I think potentially this could have been a longer movie, but they cut it down a little bit, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I do. And I think the filmmakers knew that. I think they made all the right calls here. Like I said, I mean, once you find out what the twist is, there's only like 12 minutes left in just the climax. So lesser filmmakers would have kept pushing the runtime a little bit more, but no, at this point, you got to just get us to the end because we already understand what's happening.
Yeah, and for a movie like this or a similar movie we broke down in Session 9, where the main character is dealing with multiple personality disorder, because he did, right? Yeah, he had multiple personalities.
Well, he was affected by the place, but everything there really happened. The difference is everything here is not real. There's nothing. There's like only 10% of this movie takes place in the really real world. You know, you can't come back not in the really real world, to quote our boy from The Crow, T-Bird. But that's the difference. Session 9, at least it takes place in the real world. The whole thing does. Here it doesn't.
Right. Because in Session 9, he's a killer, but he doesn't know he's doing the killing.
Right.
He turns that part out. He turns that part of his personality off. I potentially would like to see a sequel that never came to fruition, where, you know, what happened to Malcolm after he killed everybody. He probably lived, and I kind of would have liked to seen the van drive off the road, like into the ditch, flip over a bunch of times and explode, and then everyone's dead. And then everyone's dead. Yeah, everyone's dead, and the movie's a happy ending, sort of.
Yeah.
But,
sort of,
we didn't get that. What we did get was a tight 90-minute movie that had some great kills in it and some surprise twists, many twists, and
some
Paulette,
great acting.
And some great acting. And, like we said in the breakdown in the beginning, like so many notable actors, director, writer, maybe not really, but a solid writing from a guy who did a movie called Jack Frost, of all the movies. And so and Alan Silvestri with the score. Really good stuff. So Paulette, thank you for choosing Identity for our thriller month for October. And again, if all of you want to have us break down a movie for you, sign up at our highest tier on patreon.com/podcastingafterdark, and we will do it. Whew, we will do it.
We definitely will. We'll put it through the pad treatment. And over on Patreon, while we're talking about it, like Zach mentioned earlier, for the lowest tier, you get ad-free episodes. Every episode will be ad-free. You also get them a few days early if I can get them edited in time. But the middle tier is kind of the real meat and potatoes of our Patreon page, and that is our Auteur de Force tier. That's $5 a month. You get a new episode every month of the Auteur de Force. But what we're doing is going through every single episode, every single movie in an auteur's filmography. So we started with John Carpenter. We started with his very first movie, Dark Star. We went all the way through up to Suburban Screams, and it was a wild ride, guys. And now we are on to Don Coscarelli. We just recorded our Phantasm 4 review, and we had a blast with that. But the hook of sort of that show, we don't break down the movies, but what we do is we talk about them, and we talk about them how they fit into the context of the auteur's filmography. And we hope that we're doing a good job of that. We know that the people, who are on that tier are very much enjoying it. So if you'd like to help support the show, $5 a month will get you that. It'll also get you everything underneath. So, it'll get you the ad-free versions of the episodes as well. So yeah, thank you all so much for who have signed up. Thank you to Paulette for picking this movie. It's fantastic. Yeah. And things kind of worked out well this month in that they became like these alternative thriller horror films, because I think any of these movies could have, Bruiser could be in the horror section, Identity could be in the horror section, but they're kind of alternatives. And we kind of took that idea and did the same thing with our TV Obscura for Halloween as well. So we had some fun with it, but we basically built our entire month based off of Paulette and Cam Sully's picks. So thank you both for that.
Yeah, thank you guys for suggesting titles that we might not ever even think of suggesting. Next month, we'll be back to somewhat regular programming where we pick our own movies to break down, I believe. And
maybe I think I may be tackling a Patreon pick, but no, I will be, because it'll be Rob's. But I think we only have one. So I think it'll be Rob's next month, his pick, and then you'll probably pick one of yours, which I brought, a few of them with me, so you can kind of choose from that.
That's right. So you'll find out what those are on Wrap Up After Dark if you're a Patreon member. If not, you'll have to find out when all the other people do later on. So be one of the cool kids and sign up to Patreon.
Cool. And Zach, what do you got going on Patreon? We're just talking about Patreon now. So $2 late fee also has a Patreon page, a robust Patreon page. And what's going on in October over there?
Well, I literally earlier today just recorded a episode of Tales from the Video Store, which will be exclusive to Patreon members, Patreon members first, and then put out on the free feed to just give everybody a taste of what we do on Tales from the Video Store. We talked to Tim Sullivan. He's the director of 2001 Maniacs and Driftwood, and he also was an associate producer for Detroit Rock City back in the day.
Oh, cool.
Really knowledgeable horror hound, and told some great stories about working at a video store, and just a great nostalgic conversation of video store days, what we could do back then versus what we can't do anymore. Love that conversation. He's actually going to join us for our trivia at the end of October, where Dustin or myself will play against a guest, and we'll play for patrons. Last month we played for Corey, and the guest was Sean Kanan from Cobra Kai and Karate Kid 3. That will be live on YouTube at the end of the month. Go to our Instagram for that specific date, but it'll be a horror-centric trivia that Dustin will be hosting. I will be playing against Tim Sullivan. And boy, oh boy, yeah, we got a lot of stuff cooking over a $2 late fee as well. It's been a busy couple of months, and as we're getting towards the end of the year, it's only going to get busier.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you can find all the links for both shows, our show and $2 Late Fee, podcastafterdark.com, and then $2latefee.com. That's TWO. And, talking about Patreon, we know times are always tough. Money's tight. A free way to help both shows is to leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen that can allow ratings. And please give either show a five-star rating, and it really does go a long way in helping getting new listeners in front of both of our shows. But again, thank you so much, Paulette, for doing this. We hope you enjoyed our breakdown. Some of her previous films that we did was The Ballad of Cable Hogue and Knockabout. She has very eclectic tastes, and I'm very interested in seeing what your next pick will be, because this was a lot of fun. So thank you again so much, Paulette. You're awesome. And as always,
we'll catch you on the dark side. Be sure to subscribe to Podcasting After Dark and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Support Podcasting After Dark on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Podcasting After Dark. And visit us next time for another installment of Podcasting After Dark with Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer.
I'm John, and I'm the host of Action Action. Every week, I'm joined by James.
Heyo.
And Dustin.
Hello.
And each week, we review, debate, and rank a different action movie.
We're creating the ultimate list of action movies.
From awful to awesome.
So if you want to hear 3 more white guys with beards talk about action movies,
and argue about where they belong on our list,
and decide you hate us because we made fun of your favorite movie,
join us every Tuesday, and you can find us on your favorite podcatcher.
And Steven Seagal is a joke.